Hi guys. Tonight we step out into a frozen medieval hillside just before dawn, and you are already awake because the cold will not allow anything like a gentle sleep. Your breath clouds the air in front of you, and the grass beneath your boots crackles with frost as if the land itself is whispering. Somewhere downhill, sheep shift and murmur, their bells clicking softly like tired metronomes. You pull your cloak tighter and feel that familiar mix of ache and alertness settle into your bones. This is not a cozy night by any modern standard. You probably won't survive this without learning quickly, because winter does not negotiate. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you are awake somewhere else in the world right now, post your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights and let the cold seep in gently as the story begins. You stand where shepherds have stood for centuries, on high ground chosen not for comfort but for visibility. In the Middle Ages, tending sheep is year-round work, and winter does not excuse you from the job. A mainstream historical fact worth grounding yourself in is that medieval economies relied heavily on wool, making shepherds essential workers long before anyone used that phrase. Wool pays rents, feeds monasteries, and funds kings. Because of that, you stay with the flock even when the nights freeze solid. The cold feels different here. It is not a sudden shock but a steady pressure, creeping from your toes upward. You feel it in your fingers first, then in your jaw as you clench your teeth without noticing. The wind smells sharp, carrying hints of snow and lanolin from the sheep. You listen carefully. Sound matters now. A distant howl or the panicked shuffle of hooves can pull you fully awake in an instant. Sleep, for you, will never be deep in winter. It is more like drifting while keeping one eye open. As you prepare to lie down, you do not think in terms of hours. Time is measured by darkness and light, by how long the fire lasts, by whether the sheep settle or stay restless. Historians still argue whether medieval shepherds slept in long blocks or short bursts during winter, but evidence from manorial records and later rural traditions suggests fragmented rest was common. You close your eyes knowing they may open again soon. You lower yourself onto the ground carefully, choosing a spot that blocks the wind with a rise of earth or a rough stone wall. The ground is hard, but you have learned to accept that. Straw, if you have any, is precious. Tonight, you have only a folded cloak and a layer of dried grass scraped together earlier. You lie on your side, knees drawn slightly up, conserving warmth. This curled posture is practical, not poetic, and your body knows it well. A quirky tidbit drifts into your half-awake mind, something you once heard from an older shepherd. Some believed sleeping with your head pointed uphill kept bad spirits from sliding down into your dreams. Whether or not you believe it, you notice you have done exactly that, head angled toward higher ground. Old habits blur with superstition when nights grow long. Around you, the sheep breathe in a slow collective rhythm. Their bodies radiate a gentle warmth, and staying close to them is not sentimentality, it is strategy. You feel comforted by the familiar smell of wool and earth. Your dog shifts nearby, a solid presence against your back. The animal sighs, then stills, always half listening. Dogs are not pets here. They are partners, alarms, and sometimes the reason you wake up alive. You think briefly of stone houses in distant villages, of hearths and benches and roofs that do not flap in the wind. Then you let that thought go. Envy burns calories you cannot spare. Out here, you accept what is. Your eyelids grow heavy, not because you are warm or safe, but because exhaustion presses down harder than fear. The day began before sunrise, and tomorrow will do the same. As sleep approaches, it does not arrive all at once. It comes in waves, shallow and uncertain. You drift, wake, drift again. The ground presses cold through your layers, but your body adapts, muscles loosening despite the chill. Somewhere far off, ice cracks along a stream. The sound slices through your drowsiness, then fades. You breathe, slow and measured. This is the beginning of winter for you, not a single night, but a long sequence of nights like this one, each teaching you how to sleep a little better in the cold, how to listen without panicking, how to rest without truly resting. As your thoughts blur and the hillside settles into silence, you feel yourself slipping into that light, necessary sleep that medieval shepherds know so well, never fully surrendered, never fully awake. You wake again without fully realizing you ever slept, because winter nights teach your body a strange trick. Rest comes in thin layers, stacked gently, never deep enough to lose awareness. The sky above you has shifted slightly, stars wheeling in silence, and you sense that more of the night still lies ahead. This is the rhythm you now live by. The shepherd's year has turned, and with it, your understanding of time, comfort, and sleep itself. In warmer months, your days followed grass. You moved with the flock from pasture to pasture, sleeping lightly but comfortably under open skies. Winter changes everything. A widely accepted historical reality is that medieval shepherding was seasonal in movement, but constant in labor. When grass stopped growing and snow threatened grazing, you did not simply go home. Instead, you adapted. You brought the flock lower, closer to villages or sheltered valleys, and reshaped your nights around survival rather than convenience. You feel this shift in your muscles and in your thoughts. There is less wandering now, more waiting, less sunlight, more darkness to endure. Sleep becomes something you manage, not something you fall into. You listen to your own breathing, steady and slow, because panic wastes heat. The cold presses harder just before dawn, and your body knows this instinctively, tensing in anticipation. Nearby, a sheep stamps its hoof, breaking the crust of frost. The sound ripples through the flock, then settles. You whisper softly, not words, just a low murmur meant to calm. Animals respond to tone more than language. That knowledge comes not from books, but from years of shared nights like this. As the shepherd's calendar tightens, winter nights stretch longer. Without clocks, you rely on signs. The angle of the moon, the pattern of stars you have memorized since youth, the way your dog lifts its head at certain hours. Scholars continue to dispute how medieval rural workers conceptualized time during winter, whether by strict religious hours or by natural cues. But for you, the answer is simple. Time is when you wake, when you sleep, and when you must rise again. You adjust your position slightly, rolling your shoulders to ease the ache. The ground feels colder now, as if it has drawn warmth from you while you are unaware. This is why winter sleep is never careless. You tuck your cloak closer around your legs and press your boots together to reduce exposed space. These small adjustments are learned habits, passed quietly from one shepherd to another without ceremony. There is a faint smell of smoke lingering on your clothes from last night's fire. It clings to wool and leather stubbornly. Some medieval records mention shepherds deliberately keeping smoky garments unwashed during winter, believing the scent discouraged predators. Whether that belief was practical or symbolic remains open to interpretation, but you do not mind the smell. It feels like protection. A curious and lesser-known detail drifts through your mind as you settle again. In certain regions, shepherds were advised to sleep with a small bell near their hand rather than around the sheep's necks during winter nights. The idea was that a single, deliberate ring could startle predators without causing a full stampede. You do not know if it truly works, but you can imagine the logic. Calm matters more than noise in the dark. Your thoughts grow slower now, circling inward. The shepherd's year is no longer divided by months, but by endurance. Winter sleep is lighter, but it is also more intentional. You allow yourself rest only when conditions feel right, when the wind drops, when the flock settles, when your own fear quiets enough to let your eyes close. You remember older men speaking of winter as a teacher, not a kind one, but a thorough one. It strips away unnecessary movement and forces you to listen. Sleep becomes a skill. You learn which hills hold warmth, which hollows trap frost, which nights require fire, and which allow darkness. Over time, your body adjusts. What once felt unbearable becomes familiar, even expected. The night deepens. Clouds slide across the stars, dulling their light. Snow may come by morning. You register this without alarm. Snow changes sleep again, muffling sound and brightening the dark. It can be both friend and threat. Historians still argue whether medieval shepherds preferred sleeping during snowfall or clear freezes, but your own preference depends on wind. Snow without wind is almost gentle. Your dog presses closer, sensing your shift. The animal's warmth seeps through your layers, steady and reassuring. You rest a hand on its flank briefly, a silent exchange of trust. You do not speak. Words feel too sharp for the night. Gradually, you allow your breathing to slow again. The ache in your back dulls. The cold becomes background rather than command. You slip into another shallow pocket of sleep, aware that this pattern will repeat many times before morning. This is the shepherd's winter rhythm, shaped not by comfort, but by necessity, carrying you quietly forward into the long season ahead. The cold creeps in first through your hands. Even before your feet complain, your fingers stiffen, reminding you that clothing is not decoration out here but survival made wearable. You flex them slowly inside your sleeves, feeling the rough wool scrape against skin already numbed by frost. This is where winter truly tests you, not with dramatic storms but with steady, patient pressure that never fully relents. What most surviving rural records quietly reveal is that medieval shepherds depended almost entirely on wool for winter clothing, often from the very animals they guarded. You are wrapped in layers that smell faintly of sheep because they once were sheep. A long wool tunic sits closest to your body, trapping heat in a way linen never could. Over that, a heavier cloak hangs from your shoulders, thick and uneven, mended countless times. Leather ties creak softly when you move, stiffened by cold and age. You pull the cloak tighter, feeling its weight settle. Weight matters. Light fabric flaps and leaks warmth. Heavy wool presses close, sealing pockets of air that your body warms slowly. This knowledge is not written down anywhere you can read. It lives in hands, in habits, in the way older shepherds showed you how to fold cloth before lying down. Your legs are wrapped too, not in tailored trousers, but in layered leggings and gaiters tied with cord. The knots dig slightly into your calves, but looseness would invite cold air inside. Every piece of clothing has a reason, even if the reason is discomfort traded for warmth. You shift your boots closer to the fire pit's ashes, not enough to scorch leather, just enough to keep them from freezing solid by morning. An odd custom survives in some upland regions, remembered long after the Middle Ages faded. Shepherds sometimes slept wearing tomorrow's clothes rather than changing, believing that warmed garments were safer than dry but icy ones. You do the same now, not out of superstition but practicality. Removing layers risks losing heat you may not regain before dawn. You notice how your clothing sounds at night. Wool whispers when you move. Leather sighs. Metal buckles click softly, too loudly for comfort if you are careless. Silence is another layer you wear. You learn to move slowly, deliberately, so predators hear nothing unusual. Even the sheep respond differently to noise in winter, alert and skittish, their nerves sharpened by hunger and cold. There is no uniform here. Colors vary from dull brown to faded gray, depending on dye and age. Some cloaks still show traces of plant pigments, though winter has muted everything under frost. These muted tones serve you well. Bright cloth might please a lord, but it would mark you too clearly against snow and moonlight. The question remains unsettled among historians whether medieval shepherds favored layering many thin garments or relied on fewer, heavier pieces. Archaeological finds suggest both approaches existed, shaped by region and wealth. You fall somewhere in between, wearing what you have, adding what you can find. A spare sheepskin thrown over your shoulders tonight came from an animal lost last year. Nothing is wasted. Loss becomes insulation. A faint itch crawls along your neck where wool rubs bare skin. You resist scratching. Exposed flesh cools too quickly. Instead, you tuck your chin down and let the cloak edge rise. Your breath warms the space inside, creating a small pocket of comfort. The smell inside your clothing is familiar now, a mix of smoke, animal oil, and earth. It is not pleasant, but it is yours. A lesser-known belief persists in some medieval folk traditions that certain knots sewn into cloaks could confuse winter spirits. Whether that ever mattered is unclear, but you notice the uneven stitching along your hem. Each repair tells a quiet story of past winters survived. You run a thumb over a thick seam, feeling the raised thread beneath your nail. Your head is covered too. A simple wool cap, pulled low over your ears, makes a remarkable difference. Heat escapes upward faster than anywhere else. Without it, sleep becomes impossible. With it, you can almost forget the wind scraping across the hillside. Almost. As you settle back down, you adjust your layers with care. Cloak edges overlap. Sleeves are tugged down. Gaps are sealed. This ritual repeats every night, and each time it grows more efficient. Your body learns before your mind does. Muscles remember where cold finds its way in. Nearby, another shepherd shifts. Wrapped similarly in wool and silence. You do not speak. Words would carry too far. Shared knowledge passes without language. You see the same habits mirrored in his movements. The same careful tucking and tightening. Clothing becomes a shared grammar of survival. The fire has burned low now, embers glowing faintly. You angle your body so one side faces the remaining warmth, while the other presses into your cloak. This balance keeps you from sweating, which would be dangerous. Moisture steals heat faster than wind. Staying dry is as important as staying warm. You close your eyes again, feeling the weight of your garments anchor you to the ground. The cold is still there, but it has been negotiated with. Not defeated, just managed. Wrapped in wool, leather, and habit, you slip back into that shallow, watchful sleep that winter allows, carrying your layers with you into the dark hours ahead. Sleep loosens its grip on you just enough for instinct to surface. Before you even open your eyes, you know the wind has changed. It presses from a different direction now, sliding along the slope and finding new ways to cut through cloth and bone. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the flock, and scan the dark shapes of the land around you. Shelter is never a single place. It is a decision you make again and again throughout the night. Out here, walls are rare and roofs rarer still. What is broadly understood from medieval land use is that shepherds often slept where the land itself offered protection, rather than seeking built structures. You learn to read the ground as if it were a map drawn in shadow. A low ridge breaks the wind. A cluster of rocks holds heat longer than bare soil. Even a shallow dip in the earth can spare you the worst of a gust. You move a few steps downhill, boots crunching softly. The flock shifts but does not panic. They know this routine. You choose a spot where the slope curves inward, blocking the wind just enough to make a difference. This is not comfort. It is compromise. You kneel, feel the ground with your hand, judge its hardness, its dampness. It's cold, too low and frost settles thick, too high and the wind scours everything clean. Some rural traditions preserve the idea that shepherds favored sleeping on the eastern side of hills during winter, believing the rising sun would reach them faster in the morning. Whether that belief was practical or symbolic remains uncertain, but you notice your own body leaning that way now, as if memory and instinct are quietly agreeing. You lie down again, angling your body so your back faces the wind. Your cloak flutters briefly, then settles. The ground here is uneven, but you welcome that. Flat land collects cold like water. Slight irregularity allows air to move away, carrying frost with it. These are small advantages, but winter is survived through small advantages stacked carefully. A curious detail appears in a handful of medieval illustrations showing shepherds sleeping beside low stone enclosures called folds. These were meant for sheep, not people, yet you often borrow them anyway. Tonight, a broken section of wall offers just enough height to block the worst of the wind. You tuck yourself against it, stones cold through your cloak, but steady and unmoving. The smell of damp earth rises as you settle. It mixes with wool and smoke, grounding you. You listen again. The flock breathes in waves. Your dog circles once, twice, then lies down with its head toward the open side of the hill. Shelter is never complete. Someone must always face the dark. There is still no agreement among historians about how permanent winter shelters for shepherds truly were during the Middle Ages. Some argue that small huts were common, others suggest they were rare and used only in the harshest regions. From where you lie, the debate feels distant. You use what exists. Tonight, the land itself is your shelter. You pull your cloak over your face briefly, trapping warmth, then lower it again so you can breathe easily. The cold stone at your back leaches heat slowly, but it also blocks the wind entirely. You accept the trade. Comfort is not the goal. Stability is. Your mind drifts to places where shelter is more solid, barns borrowed from nearby villages, lean-tos built from branches and turf. Those nights feel different. Safer, perhaps, but also heavier. The air thick with animal breath and rot. Out here, the cold is cleaner. It hurts, but it does not suffocate. A half-remembered saying from an older shepherd floats through your thoughts. The hill will keep you if you listen to it. You do not know where he heard it, or if it means anything at all, but you listen now. Wind over stone, sheep shifting, ice cracking somewhere below. These sounds tell you whether your chosen place will hold. Satisfied, you settle fully, pressing your shoulder into the earth, drawing your knees up slightly. The dog exhales, long and slow, its body a quiet barrier against the night. You place one hand on your crook, the other tucked under your chest. This posture keeps blood close to your core, warmth cycling where it is needed most. Your breathing evens out. The hill does not move. The wind slides past without biting as sharply. Shelter, for now, has been found. You let your eyes close again, knowing this decision may change before morning, but trusting it long enough to rest. Winter sleep continues, shaped by land and instinct, carrying you deeper into the night. The night loosens slightly when you come upon signs of human hands. Not a home, not truly, but something shaped with intention. A low roofline, barely visible against the dark, the smell of old wood and packed earth. These places sit between work and rest, never meant for comfort, only for holding together what winter threatens to pull apart. In many pastoral regions, especially across Britain and parts of northern Europe, shepherds relied on small field shelters, often called huts or folds. Manorial documents and later rural surveys quietly confirm their presence, though they were rarely recorded in detail. You step inside one now, stooping low. The roof nearly brushes your cap. Smoke stains darken the rafters, evidence of many nights like this. The space is narrow. You can stretch your legs only if you angle them carefully. Sheep sometimes shelter here too, their bodies pressing warmth into the walls, their breath clouding the air. Tonight the flock remains outside, but their heat still lingers, trapped in wood and earth. You welcome it, even as the smell of damp wool and old droppings curls into your nose. You settle near the back wall, where wind finds fewer cracks. The ground inside is trampled flat, hard but dry. Dry matters more than soft. You lay your cloak down first, then a bundle of straw gathered earlier. It is not much, but it lifts you just enough from the cold earth. You lower yourself slowly, joints protesting, then still. One strange practice appears in a few rural accounts from later centuries, likely inherited from medieval habits. Shepherds sometimes slept sitting up inside these huts, backs against the wall, knees drawn tight. The posture conserved heat and allowed quicker waking. You try it now, finding that it keeps your spine warm, though your legs complain. Comfort is temporary, warmth is not. The fire pit sits at the center, little more than a ring of stones. You stir the embers with a stick, coaxing a faint glow. You do not build a full fire. Smoke would thicken the air too quickly. Instead, you let the warmth spread slowly, barely visible. Fire here is a guest, not a companion. There is still disagreement among medieval specialists about how often shepherds shared these shelters with animals during winter nights. Some evidence suggests sheep were brought inside only during severe storms, while other traditions imply constant closeness. You have done both, depending on need. Tonight, the flock remains outside, clustered close, trusting you to watch. The hut creaks softly as the wind brushes past. Every sound feels louder in enclosed space. You listen for changes, for anything out of place. The dog positions itself near the entrance, body angled outward, ears tuned to the dark. You reach down and touch its head briefly. The contact steadies you both. Your thoughts wander to barns borrowed from farmers during harsh weather. Those nights feel different. Larger spaces, heavier smells, the weight of many animals breathing together. You sleep there when allowed, grateful for walls but wary of strangers. Out here, this hut belongs to the land more than to any person. It asks little and offers just enough. A small bundle hangs from a peg near the wall, left by someone before you. Dried herbs, brittle and fragrant. Some shepherds believed certain plants, burned or simply hung nearby, could keep illness away during winter sleep. Whether that belief held any truth is unclear, but you leave the bundle untouched. Familiar rituals deserve respect. You shift, adjusting your cloak, tucking it beneath your feet. The air inside warms slowly, just enough to take the edge off the cold. Your breath no longer fogs as thickly. Outside, the flock settles further, bells falling quiet one by one. The hill seems to exhale. There is a sense of pause here. Not safety exactly, but reprieve. These shelters do not end winter. They simply soften it. You allow your shoulders to drop, muscles unclenching slightly. Your eyes grow heavy again, not from comfort, but from relief. As sleep returns, it feels different than it did under open sky. The darkness is closer, the sounds fewer but sharper. You remain alert even as you drift, aware of walls around you, of the low ceiling above your head. You rest, knowing that this space, temporary and imperfect, has been shaped by countless hands before yours, each seeking the same thing you seek now, a place to lie down, to keep watch, and to survive the night. You do not truly sleep apart from the flock. Even when walls or rough shelter exist, distance feels dangerous. As you lie there, half turned toward the doorway, your attention keeps drifting outward, drawn by the quiet mass of animals just beyond. Their presence shapes every choice you make about rest. In winter, closeness is not sentiment, it is strategy. You rise briefly and step outside, breath catching as cold bites your face again. The sheep are gathered tightly now, bodies pressed together in a dense, breathing cluster. Steam rises from their backs, drifting upward like low fog. You move among them slowly, careful not to startle. Their warmth brushes your legs, seeping through wool and leather. Standing here for even a moment changes how your body feels. Fingers loosen, toes wake slightly. You understand why shepherds rarely slept far away. Most medieval rural sources point to one clear reality. Shepherds were expected to remain near their flocks at night, especially in winter, when losses could be devastating. Wolves, thieves, sudden illness, even panic could scatter sheep in darkness. Sleep taken too far away was sleep that risked everything. You lean on your crook and listen, letting the flock's low sounds steady your breathing. You choose a place at the edge of the cluster, not inside it. Being surrounded might bring warmth, but it brings danger too. A startled sheep can knock you down. A sudden rush can trample. You have learned to stay close enough to feel heat, far enough to move quickly. Balance governs every decision here. As you settle back down, you angle your body so your feet point toward the sheep. Cold drains fastest from extremities. This position allows warmth to creep upward through your legs. It is a small thing, but small things decide whether sleep comes at all. You pull your cloak tighter and let your boots rest against a woolly flank. The animal shifts slightly, then stills, accepting you as part of the night. There is a quiet understanding between you and the flock. They know your shape, your smell, your sounds. You know theirs. When a sheep coughs or shuffles, you recognize the difference between discomfort and alarm. This familiarity allows your body to relax just enough to drift. Without it, every sound would jolt you awake. Some pastoral traditions preserve the idea that shepherds deliberately chose older, calmer sheep to sleep nearest during winter nights. These animals were less likely to bolt suddenly. Whether this practice was widespread or occasional remains uncertain, but you find yourself gravitating toward the same steady presence each night. The old ewe barely reacts as you settle near her. Her breathing is slow, dependable. Your dog positions itself slightly apart, forming a triangle of watchfulness. Sheep at one side, dog at the other, you in between. This formation is not planned consciously. It emerges naturally, refined over many nights. It allows warmth to flow while keeping lines of sight open. Even in rest, you are arranged for vigilance. The air smells thick here. Wool, damp earth, animal breath. It is not unpleasant, but it is heavy. You breathe shallowly at first, then adjust. The smell becomes background, another layer of familiarity. In winter, scent travels less. Cold air holds it close. Predators smell you too, but they smell the dog, the fire ash, the mass of sheep. It becomes a warning more than an invitation. A curious belief lingers in certain mountain regions, passed down long after the medieval period. Shepherds claimed that sleeping near sheep protected them from nightmares, as the animals absorbed bad dreams. You smile faintly at the thought, even as you rest your hand against warm wool. Whether or not dreams travel that way, you notice your thoughts grow calmer here. Fear softens when shared. Your sleep comes in fragments again. A few minutes, sometimes longer. You wake briefly, when the flock shifts as one, then settle when it quiets. Each movement reassures you that all is well. This constant feedback loop replaces deep sleep. You rest by monitoring rather than escaping. Modern researchers examining medieval pastoral life continue to disagree on how much true rest shepherds achieved during winter. Some suggest chronic exhaustion. Others argue the body adapted, learning to recover in shorter cycles. From where you lie, the question feels abstract. You are tired, yes, but not broken. Your body knows this rhythm now. It bends rather than snaps. Snow begins to fall lightly, barely audible. The sheep respond by pressing closer together. Warmth intensifies. You feel it through your cloak, through your bones. Snow changes sound, softening edges, muting distance. The world shrinks to what you can touch and hear. This is when sleep becomes easiest, wrapped in quiet and shared heat. You tilt your head back and look up briefly. Snowflakes drift past the stars, catching faint light before vanishing. Your eyelashes gather frost. You blink slowly and close your eyes again. Your breathing syncs with the animals around you, slow and steady. The night deepens. Predators stay hidden. The dog remains still but alert. You rest your cheek against your sleeve, feeling warmth where none should exist in this cold. Sleeping near the flock does not make winter gentle, but it makes it survivable. You drift again, knowing that even in sleep, you are not alone, and that closeness is the quiet shield that carries you through another frozen hour. The fire never sleeps, even when you try to. It breathes slowly, glowing and dimming like a living thing that demands attention in exchange for comfort. As you stir from another shallow stretch of rest, the first thing you notice is the change in warmth against your face. The heat has thinned. That means the embers are fading, and with them, your narrow margin of safety. You rise carefully, joints stiff, and crouch near the fire pit. Ash clings to your fingers as you stir gently, coaxing life from what remains. A faint red pulse answers back. You add a small stick, then another. Not enough to flare, just enough to feed. Fire in winter is not about brightness. It is about restraint. Too much heat brings sweat. Sweat brings danger. You have learned this lesson more than once. Across medieval Europe, it is widely recognized that shepherds used fire sparingly at night, especially when sleeping near animals. Open flames could spook sheep or draw unwanted attention. Instead, low, smoldering heat was preferred, more suggestion than blaze. You practice this balance instinctively now, reading flame and smoke as carefully as weather. The fire smells of resin and damp wood, sharp and grounding. Smoke curls upward, slipping through gaps in the shelter roof, or dispersing into the open air if you are outside. You angle your body so the warmth reaches your chest without stinging your eyes. Fire placement matters. A poorly placed fire steals sleep rather than offering it. You sit back on your heels, hands extended briefly toward the heat. The relief is immediate but fleeting. You do not linger. Skin can warm faster than blood, creating false comfort. You warm just enough to restore feeling, then retreat again. Fire is a tool, not a refuge. A lesser-known rural habit appears in scattered folk records. Some shepherds kept a heated stone near their bedding, warmed by the fire and wrapped in cloth. The stone released heat slowly through the night. You have tried this when time allowed. Tonight, there was no chance. Still, you remember the weight of it, the way it pressed warmth steadily into your side. A simple thing, but effective. The fire crackles softly now, settled. You listen for changes in sound. A sudden pop could mean damp wood. A hiss might signal snow landing on embers. These sounds wake you even when sleep tries to claim you fully. Fire teaches you vigilance through noise. You return to your place, lowering yourself carefully, keeping the fire within sight. Even with eyes closed, you sense its presence. The glow paints the inside of your eyelids red when you blink. That color becomes part of your night, a marker of safety and responsibility intertwined. There is ongoing discussion among medieval scholars about how shepherds sourced fuel during harsh winters. Some argue firewood was scarce and carefully rationed. Others suggest that dung, turf, and brush supplemented wood when forests were distant. You have burned all of these at different times. Tonight's fuel is rough and smoky, gathered from hedgerows earlier in the day. It burns reluctantly, but it burns. The smell of dung fire lingers differently than wood, earthy and persistent. It seeps into clothing, hair, skin. You do not mind. Smell is memory. Later, when winter eases, that scent will remind you that you endured. Fire also shapes how you sleep. You do not lie flat when it burns. Instead, you angle your body, one shoulder closer, one farther away. This allows warmth to circulate without overheating. You wake often to adjust, sometimes without opening your eyes. These movements become automatic, like turning over in a bed that no longer exists. The dog lifts its head briefly as you settle again, eyes reflecting faint light. It watches the fire too. Animals understand warmth. The sheep remain calm, reassured by the familiar glow and your steady presence. Fire does not frighten them when it is low and constant. Sudden flames would be another matter entirely. An old belief surfaces in certain mountain communities, whispered rather than written. Fire was thought to confuse night spirits, keeping them circling at a distance. Whether spirits existed or not, the effect on people was real. Fire steadies the mind. You feel it now. The dark seems less heavy. Thoughts slow. Fears soften. You drift again, but not deeply. Fire requires tending. It pulls you back every so often, demanding a glance, a small adjustment. This rhythm becomes part of your sleep. Wake, feed, settle, repeat. Winter nights are built from repetition rather than rest. At some point, snow thickens. You hear it land softly near the fire, melting on warm stones. Steam rises briefly, then fades. The fire hisses, then steadies. You note the change without alarm. Snow insulates. It quiets the world. It can even protect embers from wind. Your breath fogs less now. The fire has earned its keep. You feel warmth reach deeper, into your chest, easing the tightness there. This is as close to comfort as winter allows. You accept it without reaching for more. There is still no consensus among historians on whether medieval shepherds slept better with fire or without it during winter. Some evidence suggests nights without fire conserved energy by preventing wakefulness. Other accounts emphasize fire as essential protection. Your experience falls somewhere between. Fire keeps you alive, but it also keeps you awake. Both are necessary. As the embers settle into a steady glow, you let your eyes close again. The red light fades behind your lids. The fire breathes softly, matching your own rhythm. You surrender to another fragment of sleep, knowing you will wake again before long, drawn back by responsibility, by cold, by flame. Winter does not ask you to choose between rest and vigilance. It demands both, layered carefully through the long night. Hunger does not wait for morning. It arrives quietly as the fire settles and the flock grows still, a low ache beneath your ribs that reminds you how closely sleep and food are tied. You feel it now as you shift, a hollow sensation that sharpens the cold rather than dulls it. In winter, you learn quickly that what you eat before lying down shapes how well you endure the night. You sit up slowly and reach into your pouch, fingers stiff as they fumble with leather ties. Inside, there is little, but little is expected. A heel of coarse bread, hard as wood at the edges. A bit of cheese wrapped in cloth, sharp-smelling and crumbly. Sometimes there is dried meat. Sometimes only onions or apples stored too long. Tonight, it is bread and cheese, enough to keep your body working through the dark hours. It is well established from household accounts and estate records that medieval shepherds relied on simple, high-energy foods, especially during winter nights. Bread and cheese appear again and again in records, not because they were luxurious, but because they traveled well and fed the body steadily. You break the bread carefully, listening to it crack. Sound carries at night. You chew slowly, letting saliva soften it before swallowing. Eating is not rushed. Food warms you from the inside, and that warmth spreads more slowly than fire. You feel it begin in your stomach, then creep outward, easing the tightness in your chest. This internal heat is precious. It lasts longer than flame and does not steal moisture from your skin. You savor it without indulgence. You take a small sip from your flask. Water, cold but not frozen. Wine or ale might appear on feast days or near villages, but out here, water is safer. Alcohol dulls awareness. You cannot afford that. You drink just enough to swallow the food comfortably, then cork the flask again. Too much liquid invites frequent waking, and waking means losing heat. A curious dietary habit appears in some rural traditions. Shepherds were sometimes encouraged to eat fatty foods before sleep in winter, believing fat burned slower and kept the body warm longer. Whether they understood metabolism or simply observed results is unclear. You notice the cheese does help, its richness settling heavily but reassuringly. Hunger fades to a manageable murmur. You wipe your hands on your cloak and tuck the pouch away. Food attracts attention. Even crumbs matter. Mice, foxes, and other night wanderers notice what you leave behind. Clean habits protect sleep as much as warmth does. As you settle back down, your body responds almost immediately. Muscles loosen slightly. Shivering eases. The fire and flock feel closer, more effective. Food has shifted your balance from deficit to survival. Sleep finds you more easily now, slipping in without resistance. There remains discussion among modern historians about how often medieval shepherds ate during the night. Some suggest a single evening meal. Others believe small amounts were consumed whenever wakefulness allowed. Your own experience leans toward the latter. You eat when you wake and hunger speaks. Winter nights are long. The body cannot wait until dawn. You rest your head back against your cloak, breathing more deeply now. The taste of cheese lingers, sharp and familiar. It reminds you of villages, of stone walls and shared meals. But those thoughts drift away quickly. Nostalgia is tiring. You let it fade. The flock shifts again, but the movement feels gentler now. Bell sounds are fewer. Snow has muffled everything further. You register these changes as signs. Calm, stability, a good moment to rest. Your dog settles fully at last, stretching out with a low sigh. Animals eat when they can too. Its contentment mirrors your own. Shared rhythms bind you together, shaped by cold and need. Sleep returns, heavier this time. Not deep enough to forget your surroundings, but deep enough to ease the edges. Your breathing slows. Your heart steadies. The fire glows steadily behind closed lids. Food works quietly within you, fueling warmth, supporting rest. As the night carries on, you drift in and out, but hunger does not return with the same urgency. You have given your body what it needs for now. Winter still surrounds you, vast and patient, but inside your chest, there is a small, steady warmth holding its ground. Wrapped in wool, flanked by sheep and fire, fed just enough, you surrender again to that careful, necessary sleep that keeps you moving through the cold season, one night at a time. Sleep changes again when you pay attention to what lies beneath you. Clothing and fire matter, food helps, but the ground decides everything. Cold rises patiently from the earth, indifferent to effort or intention. You feel it now through your layers, a steady pull that drains warmth unless you interrupt it. Bedding, such as it is, becomes your quiet ally. You reach for what you gathered earlier, a thin bundle of straw tied loosely with twine. It crackles softly as you spread it out, the sound sharp in the still night. Straw is never soft for long. It breaks, shifts, flattens, but even flattened straw lifts you just enough to slow the cold creeping upward. That small separation makes a measurable difference by morning. From estate inventories and rural records, it is clear that straw was among the most common materials used for sleeping by medieval labourers, shepherds included. Not because it was comfortable, but because it was available. You work with what exists. Straw from threshing floors, dry grasses cut and bundled before snow, sometimes reeds from riverbanks. Whatever can be carried becomes bedding. You layer your cloak over the straw, then another piece of cloth folded thickly beneath your shoulders. Shoulders lose heat faster than hips. You learn that through trial and error. You lie down slowly, testing the surface, adjusting until pressure spreads evenly. Sharp stones dig less when weight is balanced. Experience teaches you these things more reliably than instruction ever could. There is a faint sweetness in the straw, mixed with damp earth. It reminds you of barns and harvest time, of warmer months now far away. The scent settles your thoughts. Smell matters at night. Familiar scents signal safety. New ones demand attention. In harsher weather, you sometimes add a sheepskin beneath everything else. It is heavy and awkward to carry, but it traps warmth remarkably well. Tonight, you do not have one. Still, you remember how the lanolin in the wool repels moisture, how the skin blocks cold air entirely. Those nights, sleep comes easier. You make a note to bring one next time conditions allow. An unusual practice appears in a few regional traditions. Shepherds would place branches or brush beneath straw to create air pockets, increasing insulation. Whether this was common or improvised remains uncertain, but you have tried it before. Tonight, the ground is too frozen for digging or layering. You accept the limit and work within it. You curl slightly, drawing knees toward chest, reducing surface area exposed to cold ground. This position also keeps blood circulating closer to your core. It is not restful in the modern sense, but it is effective. Your body has learned to sleep this way, muscles easing, even as joints remain bent. There is still debate among historians about how often shepherds replaced their bedding during winter. Some evidence suggests straw was refreshed frequently when available. Others imply it remained in use until it disintegrated. Your own practice depends on supply. Fresh straw insulates better. Old straw flattens and holds damp. You replace when you can. When you cannot, you endure. You tuck the edges of your cloak beneath you, sealing gaps where cold air sneaks in. Loose fabric invites drafts. Tucked fabric traps warmth. This simple adjustment saves more energy than most people realize. You do it without thinking now, hands moving with practiced ease. Nearby, another shepherd shifts on his own bedding. You hear straw rustle, then settle. No words pass between you. Shared hardship builds quiet understanding. Each of you knows what the other is doing, why the movement matters, how precious that small improvement will feel later. Your dog circles once, then lies down at your feet. Its body adds another layer of insulation, blocking wind and radiating heat. Animals make excellent bedding, though they move when they choose. You accept that unpredictability. Warmth is worth the inconvenience. A curious folk belief surfaces in some rural areas. It was said that sleeping directly on bare earth invited illness, while bedding created a barrier not only against cold, but against sickness rising from the ground. Whether medieval people understood microbes or not, they observed patterns. You have noticed it too. Nights without bedding leave you stiffer, weaker, slower to recover. As you settle, your breathing evens out. The straw compresses slightly beneath you, then holds. The ground feels less aggressive now. It's cold, muted rather than relentless. You still feel it, but it no longer dominates your awareness. This is the goal, not comfort, but tolerability. Your thoughts drift as sleep approaches. The feel of straw against wool, the smell of earth and animal, the faint warmth trapped beneath layers. These sensations blend into a background hum that your body accepts. Winter sleep is never deep, but it can be steady. Snow continues to fall lightly, insulating the ground further. You feel the change as a subtle easing, as if the earth itself has exhaled. Bedding works better when the world quiets. Sound dulls. Wind softens. Cold becomes consistent rather than biting. You shift once more, adjusting your shoulder, tucking fabric tighter beneath your neck. Small improvements accumulate. Each one adds a few more minutes of rest, a few fewer jolts awake. Over a season, those minutes matter. There remains no full agreement among scholars about how much bedding shepherds carried versus gathered nightly. Some argue mobility-limited supplies. Others point to regional practices of stockpiling materials. Your experience balances both. You carry what you can. You gather when possible. You sleep on what remains. As you close your eyes again, the ground no longer feels like an enemy. It is still cold, still unforgiving, but it has been negotiated with. Straw, cloth, posture, habit. Together, they create a fragile pause in winter's pressure. You breathe slowly, letting that pause hold you as sleep returns. Light, but sufficient, carrying you gently into the next stretch of night. Sound becomes your constant companion as night deepens. When sleep thins, your hearing sharpens, pulling details from the dark that daylight usually hides. You lie still, eyes closed, yet the pasture speaks around you in layers. Every noise carries meaning, every pause does too. The first sound you register is wind moving through dry grass, a low brushing that shifts with each change in direction. It tells you where cold will come from next. You adjust instinctively, turning your shoulder just enough to shield your chest. Above that, you hear the faint click of bells, not ringing, just touching, as sheep breathe and resettle. A steady bell is comfort. Sudden silence or frantic clatter would snap you fully awake. Accounts from rural life make it clear that shepherds relied heavily on sound to guard their flocks at night. Vision fades quickly after sunset, but ears remain reliable. You listen not for individual noises, but for patterns. Familiar rhythms soothe, broken rhythms warn. Somewhere farther off, a fox cries, sharp and sudden. The sound cuts through the quiet, raising the hair on your arms. You do not move. Foxes test boundaries. They want reaction. The flock stiffens briefly, then relaxes. No panic. That tells you the fox is hunting elsewhere. You breathe again, slow and controlled. You notice how snow changes sound. Earlier, noises carried farther. Now, falling flakes soften everything, wrapping the pasture in a thick hush. Footsteps vanish quickly. Distant calls fade faster. Snow is both gift and risk. It muffles predators, but it muffles warnings too. You lean into your hearing, straining gently, never forcing. A small sound close by makes you shift. The crunch of straw under a hoof. You open one eye. A sheep has stepped closer, seeking warmth. Its presence blocks a sliver of wind. You let it stay. Proximity like this calms you both. There exists an old rural saying that shepherds could tell the health of their flock by listening at night. Healthy sheep breathe evenly, occasionally cough, rarely cry out. You listen now, cataloguing sounds without conscious effort. A wheeze would worry you. A long silence would too. Tonight, everything falls within normal range. Your shoulders loosen slightly. The dog lifts its head, ears pivoting. You follow its focus. Nothing obvious reaches you, but you trust the animal's instincts. Dogs hear beyond human range. You stay still, hand resting on your crook, ready but not tense. After a moment, the dog settles again. Whatever it sensed passed without incident. There remains disagreement among historians about how often shepherds actively patrolled their flocks at night versus relying on listening from a fixed spot. Some evidence points to frequent movement. Others suggest stillness was preferred. Your own practice depends on sound. If the night speaks calmly, you remain where you are. Movement risks noise. Noise invites trouble. You hear ice crack somewhere below, a deep, hollow sound that echoes faintly, a stream adjusting to colder temperatures. The noise startles you the first few times each winter. Now, it simply informs you. The freeze is deepening. Morning will be harder. The soundscape shifts again as the fire pops softly. You recognize the tone immediately. A pocket of moisture in the wood has escaped. The fire remains stable. You do not rise. Not yet. A curious belief lingers in some pastoral communities. Shepherds claimed certain songs, hummed quietly, could soothe flocks and steady nerves during winter nights. You do not sing, but you hum under your breath, barely audible, more vibration than sound. The act steadies your breathing. Whether the sheep notice hardly matters. You do. Your own body contributes to the soundscape. Breath moving through wool. A quiet sniff as cold air brushes your nose. The creak of leather when you shift slightly. You learn to recognize your own noises so they do not alarm you. Self-awareness becomes part of rest. Far off, a wolf howls. The sound is long, drawn out, testing the night. Your heart rate lifts instantly, then steadies. Wolves rarely approach guarded flocks directly, but they watch. They wait for weakness. You listen carefully. No answering calls nearby. That is good. A lone voice is less dangerous than a chorus. The flock responds with subtle movement, bodies pressing closer, bells touching more often. The sound is low and contained. You place a hand against the ground, feeling vibration as much as hearing it. Everything remains controlled. You stay where you are. Snow thickens, further dulling the world. The quiet grows dense, almost physical. In this stillness, even small noises feel amplified. You hear your own heartbeat briefly, loud in your ears. You focus on slowing it. Calm matters. Panic wastes energy. Modern researchers studying pastoral life note that chronic exposure to such sound environments trained shepherds to sleep lightly but efficiently. The brain learns which noises matter and which can be ignored. You feel that training now. Your body sorts sounds automatically, letting you drift while keeping watch. You close your eyes again, letting sound guide rather than disturb you. The pasture breathes, the flock murmurs, the fire settles, snow falls. All the elements align into a fragile balance that allows rest. Sleep comes not as an escape, but as a shared agreement between you and the night. You trust your ears to wake you if needed. Until then, you allow yourself to drift, wrapped in wool and quiet, listening even as dreams begin to form, carried softly on the muffled sounds of a winter pasture. Weather never waits politely for you to be ready. It arrives, judges, and decides how the night will unfold. As you drift in and out of light sleep, you sense the shift before fully waking. The air feels heavier now, colder in a way that presses rather than bites. Frost has tightened its grip, and with it, the rules of the night have changed again. You open your eyes and scan the sky. Clouds have thinned, leaving the stars sharp and bright. Clear skies mean deeper cold. Snow insulates, but clear air steals warmth relentlessly. You register this without panic. You have learned to read these signs the way others read letters on a page. Winter weather dictates how you lie, where you lie, and how long you allow yourself to rest at a stretch. When frost deepens, stillness becomes dangerous. You shift slightly, flexing toes inside boots, rolling shoulders beneath your cloak. Movement keeps blood flowing. It also keeps sleep shallow, but shallow sleep is safer than none. What surviving medieval climate records quietly show is that winters during certain periods were harsher than what many regions experience today. The colder phases of the Middle Ages forced rural workers to adapt constantly. You feel that reality now, not as an abstract idea, but as pressure against your skin and bones. The ground beneath you stiffens further as the temperature drops. Straw crackles faintly when you move. You press your hand flat against the earth, sensing how unforgiving it has become. This is when posture matters most. You draw your knees closer, rounding your back slightly, protecting your core. It is not comfortable, but it is efficient. Wind rises briefly, then settles. Even a small breeze changes everything. It pulls heat away faster than still air ever could. You angle your body again, placing your back fully toward the direction of the gusts. The wall of the shelter, rough and cold, blocks the worst of it. You accept the chill seeping through stone in exchange for calm. There is a long-standing question among climate historians about how much medieval shepherds altered their sleeping habits during extreme cold versus maintaining routine. From where you lie, the answer feels obvious. Routine bends, survival does not. Your breath fogs thickly now, lingering longer before fading. You tuck your chin deeper, letting warm air cycle back toward your face. This small pocket of warmth makes a surprising difference. You breathe slower, deliberately, resisting the urge to gasp against the cold. A faint creaking sound reaches you as ice expands somewhere nearby. Trees complain softly. Stones shift. Even the landscape reacts to falling temperatures. These sounds remind you that cold affects everything, not just flesh. You are not alone in enduring it. The sheep huddle tighter, bodies forming a dense mass that traps warmth effectively. You feel grateful for their instinct. Their collective behavior eases your task. You move closer, careful not to disturb them, letting their heat support yours. In severe cold, distance becomes a luxury you cannot afford. There is a peculiar observation noted in some rural chronicles. Shepherds claimed that certain nights felt colder than others, even at the same temperature. Modern thinking suggests humidity, wind, and fatigue played roles. You know this feeling well. Tonight is one of those nights. Cold feels sharper, more insistent. You respond by tightening every seal you can manage. You adjust your cloak, tucking edges beneath you, smoothing folds to eliminate gaps. You check your cap, pulling it lower over your ears. These movements are slow and practiced, performed without fully waking the flock. Each adjustment buys you a little more time before cold demands another response. Your dog presses closer, sensing the shift. Its body radiates steady warmth. You place a hand against its side briefly, grounding yourself. Animals handle cold differently. They do not worry about tomorrow. Their presence steadies you when weather grows demanding. The fire struggles now. Embers glow faintly, reluctant to give more. You consider feeding it, then decide against it. Too much fire now would invite sweating, and moisture in this cold could be disastrous. You choose to rely on body heat instead, supplemented by the flock. This decision is not heroic. It is calculated. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how often medieval shepherds faced frostbite during winter nights. Some argue it was common and poorly documented. Others suggest careful habits reduced risk significantly. You flex your fingers again, ensuring sensation remains. You do this often, without alarm, simply as maintenance. Sleep becomes even lighter now. You drift for minutes at a time, waking whenever cold creeps too close. Each waking is brief. Adjust, breathe, settle, repeat. This pattern continues for hours. It is not restful by modern standards, but it keeps you functional. As the night reaches its coldest point, just before dawn, you feel it in your chest. Breathing takes effort. Muscles resist relaxation. You remind yourself silently that this moment will pass. Cold peaks, then eases. The earth knows this cycle, even if your body resents it. A subtle change arrives. Not warmth yet, but the promise of it. The stars shift slightly. The sky lightens imperceptibly. You recognize it not by sight alone, but by the way cold stops, intensifying. That plateau tells you morning is on its way. You allow yourself to rest a little more deeply now, trusting that daylight will bring movement, fire, and relief. The night has tested you and found you adaptable. Weather has judged you and allowed you to remain. As you lie there, wrapped in wool and habit, surrounded by animals and frost, you feel a quiet respect for the land that shapes you so completely. Weather decides how you sleep, but you decide how you respond. Tonight, you have answered well enough. Sleep settles again, thin but steady, carrying you toward dawn under a sky still sharp, with cold but slowly, inevitably, loosening its grip. You are rarely truly alone, even when the night feels empty. Winter sleep brings companionship in unexpected forms, sometimes human, sometimes not. As you surface from another thin layer of rest, you become aware of someone else shifting nearby. A soft cough, the scrape of straw, another shepherd sharing the same dark, the same cold, the same careful half-sleep. You do not greet each other. Words feel unnecessary and too sharp for the hour. Instead, you acknowledge the presence with a slight movement, a shared understanding that you are both still here, both awake enough to notice. In winter, company is measured less by conversation and more by shared silence. From parish records and rural contracts, it is generally accepted that shepherds often worked in pairs or small groups during harsher seasons, not always together every night, but close enough to assist if something went wrong. You have slept alone often enough to know the difference. Solitude sharpens the senses, but companionship dulls fear. You listen as the other shepherd adjusts his bedding, careful not to disturb the flock. His movements mirror your own. Tuck cloak, shift weight, stillness. This unspoken synchronization grows over time. Without planning it, you begin to wake and settle at similar intervals, each of you unconsciously checking that the other still breathes, still listens. Shared nights make certain tasks easier. One of you can tend the fire while the other rests more deeply. One can walk the perimeter while the other remains near the sheep. Tonight, neither of you moves far. The weather has settled into a steady cold, and the flock remains calm. Still, the comfort of another human presence lingers like a low flame. There are moments when shared sleep becomes crowded. Too many bodies in a small shelter raise heat but steal air. You have learned to space yourselves carefully, offset rather than side by side. This allows warmth to circulate without suffocation. You breathe more easily now, aware of the balance. A small, almost forgotten custom appears in certain upland regions. Shepherds would agree silently on who would wake first if trouble came, not by discussion but by position. The one closest to the entrance was responsible for the first response. Tonight, that is not you. You lie farther in, shielded by stone and bodies. The knowledge allows you to let go just a little more. Yet solitude still finds you, even with others nearby. Sleep is an inward journey. As you drift, the sounds of another breathing fade into the background, replaced by your own thoughts. You think of villages asleep under roofs, of families clustered around hearths. Then you release the thought. It offers no warmth here. There is an ongoing question among social historians about how winter isolation affected shepherds mentally. Some argue loneliness weighed heavily. Others suggest the rhythm of work and sleep provided stability. Your own experience sits between. Solitude presses at times, especially during long storms, but shared nights like this remind you that you are part of something larger, even if that something speaks rarely. Your dog senses the shift in human presence too. It positions itself where it can monitor both of you, eyes half open, ears alert. Animals notice patterns humans miss. The dog's calm reassures you that all is well. As the night deepens again, you and the other shepherd fall into a loose rotation of rest. One of you stirs, the other remains still. Then it reverses. This rhythm develops without planning. It allows each of you brief stretches of deeper sleep, trusting that someone else remains partially awake. Snow thickens outside, softening the world further. The shelter feels smaller, warmer. Breath clouds the air, rising and fading slowly. You adjust your position, feeling the straw compress further beneath you. The ground no longer feels quite as hostile. Shared warmth has altered the balance. A peculiar belief circulates in some pastoral communities. Sleeping near another person during winter was thought to confuse night spirits, making it harder for harm to find a single target. Whether spirits existed or not, the effect on fear was real. You feel steadier knowing someone else would wake if you did not. At some point, the other shepherd shifts closer to the fire. You register the movement, then let it go. Trust builds quietly in these moments. You do not worry that he will take more warmth than his share. Survival depends on cooperation, not competition. Your own sleep deepens briefly. Dreams come, muted and fragmentary. You dream of walking across frozen fields that do not crack beneath your feet, of sheep moving without sound, of warmth that does not fade. The dream dissolves quickly when you wake again, but it leaves a faint calm behind. The cold remains, but it feels less personal now. Shared presence diffuses its weight. You breathe more slowly, allowing muscles to release tension. Your jaw unclenches. Your shoulders sink slightly toward the ground. These are small signs of trust, earned over many nights. There is still debate among researchers about whether communal sleeping improved survival rates during medieval winters. Evidence is scattered, indirect. But from where you lie, the answer feels simple. Two sets of ears hear more than one. Two bodies lose heat more slowly than one. Two minds resist despair better than one. As the night wears on, you and the other shepherd exchange no words, yet communicate constantly through movement and restraint. Each adjustment acknowledges the other. Each period of stillness grants permission to rest. Toward the later hours, just before the cold loosens its grip, you feel the weight of companionship most clearly. The knowledge that someone else shares this hardship with you transforms endurance into something quieter and more manageable. You are not braver. You are simply not alone. Sleep returns again, steadier now. You drift, knowing that if trouble comes, you will not face it alone. And until then, the shared silence of winter holds you both, wrapped in wool, breath, and the fragile comfort of another human presence, watching the same dark sky. Your sleep changes again as the land itself changes. Not all winters are the same, and not all shepherds face the cold in the same way. Even as you lie still, wrapped in wool and habit, you sense that this place shapes your rest differently than others you have known. Geography writes its own rules into your body, teaching you how to sleep by repetition rather than instruction. Here, the hills roll gently, open enough for wind to roam freely. In other regions, winter presses differently. You have slept in high mountain pastures, where cold arrives sharper but cleaner, the air thin and biting. There, snow piles deep and stays, insulating the ground once it settles. Nights feel quieter, almost sealed. Sleep comes easier once shelter is found, but finding it costs more effort. You remember lower wetlands too, where damp cold seeps upward relentlessly. In those places, winter sleep is a battle against moisture more than frost. Straw rots faster, cloaks grow heavy, breath feels thick. You wake more often there, not from sound or fear, but from the ache of cold that clings instead of cutting. Your body never fully dries, and sleep suffers for it. Records from different medieval regions quietly confirm these contrasts. Shepherding in upland Scotland, alpine valleys, Mediterranean hills, or northern plains demanded different strategies for winter rest. There was no single shepherd's sleep. There were many, shaped by land and climate as much as by culture. Here on this hillside, wind remains the main enemy. You choose sleeping spots with that in mind. Elsewhere, you learn to fear rain more than snow, or cold fog more than open frost. Each place trained your instincts differently. Even now, lying half asleep, your body remembers those lessons, adjusting posture and breath as if responding to ghosts of past winters. You shift slightly, testing the air. It feels dry enough. Good. Dry cold is survivable. Damp cold steals warmth invisibly, slipping past even the best wool. You have known nights where sleep felt impossible simply because moisture clung to everything. Tonight is not one of those nights. Gratitude settles quietly in your chest. In southern regions you once passed through, winter nights felt almost deceptive. Temperatures dropped, but not brutally. Shepherds there slept lighter, often under open skies, trusting mildness that could vanish suddenly. A clear night could turn sharp by dawn. Those shepherds learned flexibility. Sleep came easier, but surprises came often. There is still uncertainty among historians about how much regional knowledge shepherds carried with them when they travelled or migrated. Some argue skills transferred easily. Others suggest adaptation took years. From your own experience, you know both can be true. The body learns faster than the mind, but it still needs time. You recall sleeping near stone terraces in warmer lands, where rock held daytime heat and released it slowly through the night. Those nights felt different. The ground warmed rather than drained you. Sleep came deeper, longer. But when cold fronts swept through unexpectedly, those same stones became traps, radiating chill instead. No strategy remains perfect forever. Up here, stone offers consistency. Cold stone blocks wind and stays cold, but it does not surprise you. Predictability matters. You prefer steady hardship to sudden change. Sleep relies on that predictability. The flock responds to geography too. Sheep bred for these hills cluster differently than those from valleys. Their wool grows thicker, their instincts sharpen. Sleeping near them here feels safer than it did elsewhere. You trust their reactions. If they panic, it will be for good reason. A curious regional habit comes to mind. In some alpine communities, shepherds were said to sleep with their heads uphill and feet downhill, believing cold flowed downward like water. Whether or not that belief held physical truth, you find yourself doing it anyway. Habit merges with landscape until the two become inseparable. Sound changes by region as well. Here, wind carries noise far, then drops it suddenly. In forests, sound lingers and twists. In open plains, it travels uninterrupted. Your ears learned to interpret these differences long ago. Even now, half asleep, you can tell by sound alone whether trouble approaches from near or far. You think briefly of coastal pastures, where salt air changes everything. Metal corrodes faster. Wool stiffens differently. Cold arrives, riding damp wind that cuts through layers. Sleep there felt restless, broken by constant movement and sound. Waves never fully quiet. Compared to that, this hillside feels almost gentle. Researchers continue to discuss whether medieval shepherds chose sleeping sites based more on tradition or environmental logic. From your perspective, the two cannot be separated. Tradition often exists because it worked. Places slept in before were slept in again, not out of nostalgia, but because survival had already been proven there. Your body settles again as these thoughts drift. You adjust your cloak once more, aligning with the slope instinctively. Even in sleep, you adapt to land. Geography never leaves you, even when your eyes close. The dog shifts, sensing nothing amiss. The other shepherd remains still. The flock breathes evenly. All signs point to stability. Whatever this land demands tonight, you have already met it halfway. As hours pass, you feel the subtle difference between this sleep and sleep elsewhere. It is lighter than mountain sleep, steadier than marsh sleep, quieter than coastal rest. It carries the signature of this place into your bones. You know that if you moved tomorrow, your sleep would change again within days, shaped by new ground, new air, new sounds. There is no single way shepherds slept during medieval winters. There were dozens, perhaps hundreds, each tied to a particular patch of land. Your own sleep is one thread in that wide tapestry, woven from cold, habit, and adaptation. As you drift again, the hillside holds you in its particular way. Not kindly, not cruelly, just as it always has. You accept its terms, allowing your body to rest as best it can within them. Sleep settles, thin but dependable, shaped by geography as surely as your waking life is shaped by work, carrying you onward through another winter night. Night invites thoughts that daylight keeps at bay. As you lie there, wrapped in wool and half sleep, belief slips easily into the quiet spaces between sounds. Winter makes room for superstition, not because you are foolish, but because uncertainty grows louder when cold and darkness stretch on. You feel it now, that subtle awareness of things unseen, things named only in whispers. You have heard the stories since childhood. Older shepherds spoke of wandering lights on hillsides, of voices carried by wind that did not belong to any living throat. Whether you believed them then hardly matters. Out here, alone with frost and silence, the mind reaches for explanations that offer some sense of order. Superstition becomes a way to frame fear. Rural traditions across medieval Europe are filled with small protective rituals tied to sleep. Some were practical, others were symbolic. You know which is which, yet you perform both. A charm tied to a crook, a certain knot sewn into a cloak. These actions cost nothing and offer comfort. In winter, comfort holds value beyond logic. You adjust the small token at your neck, a simple carved piece of wood, worn smooth by years of touch. It was given to you by someone long gone, accompanied by a quiet instruction to keep it close during winter nights. Whether it guards you or merely reminds you that others once endured the same cold is unclear. Still, your fingers find it whenever unease stirs. There is evidence in church records and sermons that clergy discouraged many folk beliefs among shepherds, labeling them remnants of older practices. Yet these same records suggest such beliefs persisted stubbornly. You understand why. Out here, beyond walls and bells, belief becomes personal, rather than communal. It adapts to solitude. You listen again to the night. The wind sighs through grass, sounding briefly like breath. You tell yourself it is nothing. You know it is nothing. Still, you pull your cloak tighter. Superstition does not replace reason. It supplements it. A lesser-known habit survives in certain pastoral regions. Shepherds would leave a small portion of food untouched overnight, believing it appeased whatever shared the land with them. Whether this was meant for spirits, animals, or memory itself varies by telling. You do not do this. Food is too precious. But you understand the impulse. Sleep arrives unevenly now, punctured by brief moments of alertness sparked by imagination rather than sound. You wake, heart slightly faster, then calm yourself. You name what you hear. Wind, sheep, dog, fire. Naming steadies the mind. Fear thrives in vagueness. You think of the saints invoked in winter prayers, St. Blaise, St. Cuthbert, names spoken softly before sleep in hopes of protection. Even shepherds who scoffed at superstition often whispered prayers at night. You do too, not out loud, but inwardly, a habit worn smooth by repetition. It costs nothing. It offers structure. There remains discussion among historians about whether such beliefs truly affected behavior or merely reflected it. From your place on the ground, the distinction blurs. Belief shapes posture, routine, choices. It influences when you sleep, where you lie, how you respond to fear. That makes it part of survival, regardless of its origin. Your dog stirs suddenly, lifting its head. Your pulse jumps. You listen hard. Nothing follows. The dog settles again, satisfied. Animals' sense shifts you cannot always explain. You accept that without demanding meaning. Not every movement signals danger. Learning that is as important as learning vigilance. You recall a story told long ago of a shepherd who ignored signs and slept through a warning, losing his flock by morning. Stories like that circulate for a reason. They keep you alert. They also haunt you. You breathe slowly, grounding yourself in the present. Tonight is not that night. The cold presses again, reminding you of what truly threatens you. Superstition fades slightly as physical discomfort takes priority. You flex your fingers, adjust your cloak, shift weight. These tangible actions reclaim control. Snow continues to fall lightly, softening shapes and edges. The world feels sealed off, contained. This is when imagination can wander most freely. You counter it with routine. Check fire. Listen to sheep. Feel ground. Routine anchors thought. In some regions, shepherds believed certain nights were worse for sleep than others, marked by old calendars or lunar cycles. Whether those nights coincided with weather patterns or fatigue is still unclear. You do not track such things formally, but you recognize when a night feels restless. Tonight carries that edge, though not sharply. You allow your thoughts to slow deliberately. You focus on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Wool against skin. Straw beneath you. Dog nearby. These sensations ground you firmly in the physical world. Gradually, belief loosens its hold, not because it disappears, but because it no longer dominates. It settles into the background, one more layer among many. You accept that some questions will remain unanswered, that not everything needs explanation to be endured. Sleep returns, gentler this time. Dreams, if they come, are muted, shaped by routine rather than fear. You drift knowing that belief, like fire or wool, is another tool shepherds have used to survive winter nights. It does not banish cold or danger. It simply helps you lie still in their presence, breathing steadily, waiting for morning to arrive. Cold settles into the body quietly, not as pain at first, but as a dull insistence that never quite leaves. As you lie there, half awake, you feel it in your joints before anywhere else. Knees ache faintly, fingers stiffen. Your lower back holds tension like a clenched fist. This is the part of winter sleep no story romanticizes, the slow accumulation of discomfort that shapes how you lie and how you rise. You shift carefully, testing which movements ease the ache and which make it worse. Sudden motion sends sharp reminders through muscle and bone. Slow adjustments work better. You roll one shoulder, then the other. You flex your hands inside your sleeves, rubbing fingers together until sensation returns fully. These small acts become part of your night, as routine as listening for predators. Surviving household accounts and medical writings from the medieval period suggest that cold-related ailments were common among rural workers. Stiffness, swelling, lingering pain. Remedies were limited. Warmth, rest, and time were the only treatments most shepherds knew. You rely on the same now. There is no cure here, only management. You notice how pain changes sleep. When discomfort rises, sleep thins. You wake more often, turning to relieve pressure. Each waking costs warmth. Each movement risks letting cold back in. You learn to tolerate a certain level of ache rather than chase relief endlessly. This balance takes time to learn. Your knees protest as you draw them closer, but the posture protects your core. You accept the trade. Winter sleep is a series of trades, none ideal, all necessary. You breathe slowly, letting the ache fade into the background where possible. Illness lingers in the cold too. A cough here, a tight chest there. You listen to your own breathing, checking for roughness or strain. Tonight it sounds clear enough. That matters. Respiratory sickness steals strength quickly in winter. You keep your mouth covered, warming air before it reaches your lungs. The habit feels instinctive now. There exists an old pastoral belief that cold enters the body through exposed joints, settling there permanently if given the chance. Whether or not this held medical truth, the behavior it encouraged mattered. You keep elbows tucked, knees bent, neck covered. Prevention works better than regret. Your dog stretches nearby, then resettles. Animals feel cold too, though they hide it differently. You notice how the dog curls tightly, nose tucked against tail. You mirror the posture unconsciously. Shared behavior reinforces instinct. Sleep returns in fragments again. Each time you wake, you assess pain level, temperature, sound. The process becomes automatic. You do not dwell on it. Dwelling wastes energy. There remains disagreement among historians about how frequently shepherds were forced to abandon work due to winter illness or injury. Some records suggest resilience was expected, even demanded. Others hint at quiet substitutions and shared labor when someone faltered. You have seen both. Pain rarely excuses you fully, but it does slow you. You remember an older shepherd who walked with a permanent limp, the result of one harsh winter long past. He slept sitting more often than lying down, easing pressure on his leg. You understand him better now. Bodies carry winters with them long after snow melts. You adjust your bedding again, placing extra cloth beneath your hips to relieve pressure. The improvement is slight, but noticeable. Small changes matter. You tuck your cloak higher around your shoulders, trapping warmth where tension gathers. Slowly, muscles release a fraction. A strange calm comes with enduring discomfort long enough. Pain becomes familiar rather than alarming. It loses urgency. You stop reacting to every twinge. This does not mean you ignore it. You simply acknowledge it and move on. This mental shift allows sleep to return more easily. You drift again, dreaming lightly. In dreams, movement feels easier. Your body does not ache. You walk across ground that yields gently beneath your feet. The dream dissolves quickly when you wake, but it leaves behind a faint echo of relief. The cold remains. Your joints still ache. Nothing has changed materially, yet your response has softened. You breathe deeper. Your jaw unclenches. Acceptance steadies you. There is evidence in some medieval medical texts that warmth applied before sleep eased pain, but such warmth was rarely available to shepherds. You compensate with motion and posture. You learn which positions inflame joints and which soothe them. Over time, you shape your sleep around this knowledge. Your hands ache less now, having warmed gradually beneath layers. Fingers regain flexibility. You test them briefly, then still. Movement creates heat, but also invites exposure. You choose stillness again. As the night wears on, pain ebbs and flows. It never disappears, but it no longer dominates. You become adept at riding these shifts, letting them pass without panic. This skill serves you beyond winter, shaping how you face discomfort in all seasons. Just before dawn, the ache sharpens briefly as cold reaches its peak. You wake fully, adjust one last time, then settle again. You know this moment. You know it will pass. Experience brings patience. As sleep returns, you feel your body held together, not by comfort, but by endurance. Wool, posture, habit, and will all play their part. Winter leaves its mark, but it does not break you. You rest, knowing that pain is part of the cost you pay to remain here, guarding the flock, greeting another morning when it arrives. Sleep never fully claims you because responsibility refuses to loosen its grip. Even when your eyes close and your breathing slows, some part of you remains upright inside, listening, measuring, ready. Winter sharpens this state until it feels natural. You do not resent it anymore. Watchfulness becomes the shape of your rest. You surface from a shallow drift and realize you have been counting time without meaning to. Not hours, not minutes, but intervals between sounds, bell touches, wind shifts, the dog's quiet movements. Each interval tells you how much attention the night requires. Tonight, the gaps feel steady. That steadiness allows you to rest, though never completely. It is widely recognized in studies of medieval rural labor that shepherds were expected to remain alert through the night, particularly during winter, when losses carried greater consequences. Sleep was permitted, but vigilance was assumed. You live inside that expectation now. It shapes how you lie, how you breathe, how deeply you allow yourself to drift. You shift slightly, changing pressure on your shoulder, but keep your head angled toward the flock. Even with eyes closed, you maintain orientation. You know where the sheep cluster. You know where the open ground lies. You know where danger would come from if it came at all. This mental map stays active even in rest. Your dog lifts its head again, ears rotating. You pause your breathing for a moment, listening harder. The flock remains calm. No sudden movement, no frantic sound. The dog lowers its head. You resume breathing. This exchange happens dozens of times each night. So familiar it barely registers consciously anymore. Watchfulness breaks sleep into fragments, but it also gives structure. You drift, you surface, you check, you settle. This rhythm replaces the long, unbroken rest of safer lives. Over time, your body adapts. You recover in these fragments, stitching them together into something just enough. There remains debate among historians about whether such broken sleep harmed shepherds long-term or whether adaptation mitigated the effects. Some evidence suggests chronic fatigue. Other observations hint at remarkable resilience. From your place on the ground, the truth feels mixed. You are tired, yes, but you are also capable. You rise each day and do what must be done. That counts for something. The fire draws your attention again. Its glow has thinned further. You consider feeding it, then reconsider. The night is nearly past its coldest point. You weigh warmth against the effort and risk of moving. This calculation happens quietly, instinctively. You decide to let the fire rest. You will rely on body heat and flock warmth until dawn. You turn your attention outward again, scanning with ears rather than eyes. The night remains settled. Snow continues lightly, insulating sound. You feel oddly exposed and protected at the same time. Snow hides you, but it hides others too. You listen harder because of it. A faint scrape reaches you, not a footstep, but ice shifting against stone. You identify it quickly and dismiss it. Naming sounds is a skill you refine over years. It prevents imagination from filling gaps with fear. You catalogue, you release. You feel your own alertness wax and wane. At times, thoughts sharpen. At others, they blur. This fluctuation is natural. You do not fight it. Fighting wastes energy. You let vigilance rise when needed and recede when it can. The other shepherd stirs briefly, then settles again. His presence reinforces your own watchfulness. You are not alone in carrying it. Even when both of you rest, awareness overlaps. This shared vigilance allows each of you to let go a little more than you would alone. You adjust your crook so it rests within easy reach. Tools remain close during sleep, not because you expect immediate danger, but because readiness brings calm. Knowing you could respond quickly keeps your body from tensing unnecessarily. Preparedness is a form of rest. There is a quiet discipline to this kind of night. You do not chase every sound. You do not ignore them either. You choose which ones deserve attention. This discernment grows slowly over seasons, shaped by mistakes as much as successes. A missed warning teaches you sharply. A false alarm teaches restraint. You remember a winter night long ago when you rose too quickly at a sound that meant nothing, startling the flock and exhausting yourself for hours afterward. You learned then that vigilance must be balanced with trust. Trust in animals, trust in patterns, trust in your own judgment. Your breathing settles again, slower now. You allow your eyelids to close fully. Even then, some part of you listens. You dream lightly, if at all. Dreams, when they come, are brief and practical. You dream of walking the perimeter, of counting sheep not to sleep, but to ensure they are all present. Even your dreams keep watch. The cold eases almost imperceptibly. You notice it not by warmth, but by the absence of further tightening. The night has peaked. From here, things will slowly improve. This knowledge relaxes you more than heat ever could. You allow yourself a slightly deeper rest now, trusting that dawn approaches. Your vigilance does not disappear, but it softens. Muscles release a fraction. Jaw unclenches. You rest on readiness rather than tension. There is still uncertainty among scholars about how such constant alertness shaped the psychology of medieval shepherds. Some suggest heightened anxiety. Others argue it fostered confidence and self-reliance. Your own experience holds both. You feel tension, but you also feel capable. You know this night. You know how to move within it. As the hours thin toward morning, you wake less often. Each interval of rest grows longer. The flock remains quiet. The dog remains still. The land holds steady. You rest, knowing that watchfulness has carried you through another night. It has not robbed you of sleep so much as reshaped it. Winter demands attention, and you have given it, carefully, patiently, without drama. When sleep finally settles again, it does so with permission rather than force. You drift, knowing that if anything truly demands you, you will wake. Until then, vigilance and rest share the same narrow space, holding you between cold and dawn, prepared, breathing, enduring. You never sleep empty-handed. Even when your eyes close and your breathing slows, tools remain close, arranged not by chance, but by long habit. In winter, separation from what you need can cost more than comfort. As you settle again, you feel the familiar shape of your crook beneath your palm, smooth where countless hands have worn it down. Its presence steadies you in a way fire never quite can. The crook rests within reach, angled so you can lift it without rising fully. It is not only for guiding sheep, it extends your reach in darkness, lets you hook, push, block, or signal without stepping into danger. Rural inventories and visual depictions from the Middle Ages consistently show shepherds with such tools close at hand, not stored away, even during rest. You live that reality now. Sleep does not mean disarmament. Nearby, your knife sits tucked safely in its sheath, positioned where your hand knows to find it. You rarely need it at night, but knowing it is there quiets something inside you. Readiness reduces fear. Fear wastes warmth. The calculation is simple and has been repeated by generations before you. Your dog lies close too, an extension of your senses rather than a separate being. Its ears twitch occasionally, tracking sounds beyond your range. Its body blocks drafts and radiates heat. In many ways, it is the most important tool you have. Medieval sources describe dogs as indispensable to shepherding, especially during winter, when predators grew bolder and human movement slowed. You feel that truth in every quiet breath the animal takes beside you. You adjust slightly, making sure nothing presses uncomfortably into your side. Tools must be accessible without becoming burdens. Too close and they dig into ribs or hips. Too far and they might as well not exist. You find the balance through small movements, settling until everything aligns. There is an old practical saying among shepherds that tools should never surprise you in the dark. You test this silently, eyes closed, moving your hand to the crook, then to the knife, then resting again. Each object answers exactly where expected. Satisfied, you allow yourself to drift a little deeper. A lesser-known custom appears in some pastoral traditions. Shepherds would place a stone or heavy object near their feet at night, not for warmth, but to mark their position if they woke disoriented. Whether this was common practice or isolated habit remains unclear, but you understand the logic. Darkness can twist direction. Familiar shapes anchor you. You feel the ground again, solid beneath you. Straw shifts softly. Your cloak settles. Tools do not move. Stability invites rest. You breathe more slowly now, trusting that if you wake suddenly, your body will know where to reach. The other shepherd nearby mirrors your arrangement. His crook rests opposite yours, creating a subtle barrier between sleeping spaces. Not a wall, but a boundary. This keeps tools from tangling in the dark and gives each of you a clear zone of responsibility. You learned this arrangement without discussion, shaped by necessity rather than instruction. There remains discussion among historians about how heavily armed shepherds were during winter nights. Some evidence suggests minimal weaponry. Others point to greater readiness in regions with frequent predation. From your experience, readiness depends on context. Tonight, tools are enough. The crook guides. The knife reassures. The dog listens. Anything more would slow you. You shift your weight again, feeling the ache in your shoulder ease slightly. Tools stay put. You appreciate that. Pain distracts. Distraction invites mistakes. Everything you arrange now is meant to reduce future effort. Your thoughts drift briefly to mornings when you wake and reach instinctively for the crook before fully opening your eyes. That movement anchors you in the day ahead. Night works the same way. Tools shape transitions between sleep and waking, smoothing them, preventing panic. The fire pops softly again. You glance at it briefly, then look away. Its glow is low and steady. No action needed. You return your focus inward. Snow continues to fall, light and persistent. It lands silently on tools left outside, softening their outlines. In the morning, you will brush it away, restoring familiar shapes. For now, darkness holds them gently. A curious belief lingers in some rural communities. Tools carried through winter nights were thought to absorb the strength of their owner, becoming more reliable over time. Whether that belief holds truth hardly matters. You feel more capable with these familiar objects than with any new replacement. Wear marks tell stories. Stories build trust. You rest your hand fully on the crook now, fingers curling naturally around it. The wood feels cold at first, then warms slightly. Contact completes the circuit between body and tool. You are not just lying down. You are anchored. Sleep arrives again, thin but steady. Even in rest, awareness lingers, but it no longer strains. Tools close by allow that awareness to relax without vanishing. Preparedness replaces tension. You dream briefly, if at all. In the dream, you walk the pasture easily, crook guiding sheep that move calmly ahead of you. There is no urgency, no threat. The dream fades when you shift, but it leaves a trace of ease behind. The night continues its slow arc toward morning. Cold remains, but your body feels more settled now. Tools have done their quiet work, not by action, but by presence. As you lie there, breathing evenly, you understand something that daylight rarely reveals. Sleep here is not an absence of readiness. It is readiness folded inward, resting but intact. Tools beside you are part of that rest, extending your body into the dark even as you close your eyes. You allow yourself to drift again, knowing that if the night demands movement, you will answer without confusion. Until then, you remain still, wrapped in wool and habit, grounded by the familiar shapes at your side, carried gently through the last hours of winter darkness by the simple reassurance that everything you need is already within reach. Time moves differently when you measure it by light rather than numbers. As you drift and wake again, you sense a subtle shift overhead. The moon has climbed higher, its pale glow filtering through thin cloud and falling across the pasture in soft patches. You do not need a clock to know what this means. Your body reads the sky with quiet accuracy. Moonlight changes the night. It sharpens edges, reveals movement, and stretches shadows into long, deliberate shapes. You open your eyes and take it in, not fully waking, just enough to orient yourself. Sheep appear as rounded forms pressed together, their backs dusted faintly with snow that reflects the light. The ground glimmers where frost has settled thickest. Everything looks both clearer and more unreal. Before mechanical timekeeping reached rural lives, shepherds relied on celestial cues. The moon's position, the stars wheeling slowly overhead, the color of the sky near the horizon. This knowledge was not academic. It was necessary. You know how long until dawn by how high the moon stands and how its light angles across the slope. You note that the moon sits just past its highest point. That tells you the night has tipped. The cold may still deepen briefly, but morning has begun its slow approach. This realization eases something inside you. Anticipation of dawn is its own warmth. You adjust your position slightly, taking advantage of the increased light to check the flock without rising. All remain calm. The dog lies still, eyes half open, reflecting moonlight faintly. You trust that if anything moved beyond what you can see, the animal would tell you. Moonlight also plays tricks. Shadows ripple as clouds pass, mimicking movement. You have learned not to react to every shift. You focus on sound to confirm sight. Nothing follows. The night remains steady. In some regions, shepherds marked night hours by prayer times or bells from distant churches when they could be heard. Out here, such sounds rarely reach you. The sky becomes your calendar. You track time by the slow slide of constellations you learned as a child, shapes that return reliably year after year. They feel like companions during long nights. You remember being taught that when certain stars leaned westward, it was safe to rest more deeply. When they hovered overhead, vigilance mattered most. Whether this knowledge was precise or approximate hardly mattered. It worked often enough to be trusted. There is still discussion among scholars about how accurately medieval shepherds measured time at night. Some suggest precision was unnecessary. Others argue that regular patterns mattered for coordinating work and prayer. From where you lie, accuracy feels less important than awareness. You know enough. You always have. The moon slips behind a cloud, and the pasture dims again. You feel the change immediately. Darkness thickens, pressing closer. You respond by listening harder, letting ears take over where eyes retreat. This shift happens without conscious thought. It has happened hundreds of times before. When the moon reappears, its light feels almost gentle in comparison. You exhale slowly, releasing tension you did not realize you were holding. Light reassures, even when it offers no warmth. Snow sparkles faintly under the moon, each crystal catching light before letting it go. The sight holds your attention briefly. Beauty appears unexpectedly here, even in hardship. You allow yourself a moment to notice it. This noticing does not distract you, it steadies you. Your thoughts drift to stories of shepherds navigating entire nights by moon alone. moving flocks across unfamiliar ground when weather forced relocation. You are grateful not to be doing that tonight. Stillness feels earned. The moon's slow progress continues. You measure its movement by the way shadows slide across stone and straw. Each shift marks time passing, carrying you closer to morning. This awareness allows you to relax slightly more. You let your breathing deepen, trusting that dawn will arrive without your effort. A thin band of light begins to form far to the east, barely perceptible, more sensed than seen. You notice it instinctively. This is the earliest sign, the quiet promise of day. You do not stir the flock. It is too soon, but the knowledge settles warmly in your chest. You drift again, this time allowing sleep to thicken just a little. The moon watches silently as you rest. When you wake again, it has moved further west, its glow softer now, less commanding. Night loosens its grip. The final hours pass gently. You wake less often. Each time, the sky appears lighter, the cold less aggressive. The dog relaxes fully, trusting what it senses. The flock stirs occasionally, but without urgency. By the time the moon fades toward the horizon, daylight has already begun its quiet work. You feel it before you see it, a subtle shift in air and sound. Birds will come soon. The ground will soften slightly. Movement will return. You allow yourself one last stretch of rest, deeper than before. The long night has been measured, not by numbers, but by light and shadow, by stars and moon, by the slow turning of the world overhead. This ancient way of knowing time has carried you safely through another winter night. As sleep settles briefly again, you rest with the certainty that dawn approaches, guided not by clocks or bells, but by the steady, reliable movement of the sky that has watched shepherds sleep for centuries and will continue to do so long after this night fades into memory. When sleep finally thickens, it carries the shape of your days into the dark. Your dreams do not drift far from the pasture. They circle it, replay it, soften it. You notice this as you surface briefly, then sink again, aware that even rest here is stitched together from labor and repetition. You dream of walking the flock across ground that never freezes. In the dream, your boots sink just enough to feel earth without biting cold. Sheep move calmly ahead of you, their bells chiming in perfect rhythm. There is no wind, no ache in your joints. You guide them with ease, crook light in your hand. The simplicity feels almost suspicious. These dreams come often in winter. They are not grand or symbolic. They are practical. The mind rehearses what it knows best. Medieval accounts of rural life suggest that shepherds often carried their work into sleep, not through anxiety alone, but through familiarity. The brain repeats patterns it depends on. Your dreams do the same. You wake briefly when a sheep shifts nearby, the sound blending seamlessly into the fading dream. For a moment, you are unsure whether you are still walking or lying down. This confusion passes quickly. Cold clarifies everything. You blink, reorient, then let your eyes close again. Another dream follows, thinner than the first. This time, you are repairing a fence with hands that never numb. The wood bends easily. Knots tie themselves. Work flows without resistance. You feel a quiet satisfaction that lingers even after you wake. Dreams like this do not excite you. They soothe. There is an idea among some modern researchers that repetitive labor shapes dream content, especially in conditions of exhaustion. Others argue that dreams simply reflect unresolved needs. Your experience holds both. You dream of ease because ease is rare. You dream of work because work is constant. Your body shifts slightly, adjusting to the cold, but your mind remains wrapped in sleep. This balance is delicate. Dreams help maintain it. They distract you from discomfort without pulling you too far away from awareness. You rest more deeply during these moments, even if only briefly. A curious observation appears in later folk memory. Shepherds claimed that winter dreams were heavier than summer ones, slower and more vivid. Whether this resulted from longer nights, deeper fatigue, or colder air is uncertain. You know only that winter dreams cling more stubbornly. They fade reluctantly when morning approaches. You drift again, dreaming now of voices carried by wind. Not words, just tones. Familiar, steady. They blend with the sound of sheep breathing nearby. Dream and waking sound merge. Your body remains still, breathing slow and even. The ache in your joints recedes while you dream. Pain loosens its grip when attention shifts inward. This respite does not last, but it matters. It allows muscles to release tension they hold too tightly while awake. You wake later, feeling marginally better. Not healed, but eased. There remains disagreement among scholars about whether such fragmented sleep allowed for meaningful dreaming at all. Some argue dreams require deeper rest, others suggest brief cycles are enough. Your own nights answer the question quietly. Dreams come when they can. They adapt to circumstance like everything else here. In one dream, you lose count of sheep and feel a moment of panic. You wake immediately, heart lifting, then settle when you confirm the flock is intact. Even dreams keep watch. You smile faintly at the thought, then let it go. As the night thins further, dreams shorten. They become flashes rather than scenes. A memory of warm bread, the smell of smoke without cold, the sound of laughter from long ago. These fragments pass quickly, leaving little behind. You notice that the closer dawn draws, the less your mind wanders. It tightens focus again, preparing for waking. Dreams step aside to make room for readiness. This transition feels natural, not abrupt. Your body knows the pattern. Your breathing deepens once more. You sink into a final stretch of rest, dreamless this time. This sleep feels heavier, more complete, even if it lasts only minutes. It refreshes you more than hours of lighter drifting did earlier. Timing matters as much as duration. When you wake again, the sky has lightened slightly. The flock stirs, the dog stretches, the cold still bites, but its edge has dulled. Dreams retreat fully now, leaving you anchored in the present. You carry faint impressions of them with you. Not images, but moods. Calm, familiarity, purpose. These feelings soften the morning's first movements. They help you rise without resentment. Dreams, you realize, are another way winter sleep adapts. They offer rest where the body cannot fully take it. They smooth the sharp edges of fatigue and cold. They prepare you quietly for the day ahead. As you sit up slowly, joints protesting again, you accept that the dreams are gone. They have done their work. The pasture waits. The flock needs counting. Another day begins. You breathe in cold air and feel steady enough to move. Whatever the night demanded, you met it. Whatever dreams offered, you accepted. Together, they carried you through. You rise knowing that when night comes again, sleep and dream will return in their own careful way, shaped by labor, cold, and the quiet persistence that defines your life here. When you wake this time, the world feels slightly altered. Not warmer, not brighter exactly, but different in weight. Social lines that matter little during daylight become clearer at night, especially in winter. Where and how you sleep is never just a matter of comfort. It reflects your place in a quiet hierarchy that follows you even into rest. You become aware of this as you shift and notice the space around you. The shelter you occupy is rough but serviceable. Others sleep in better places. Some shepherds attached to large estates are granted space inside barns or stone outbuildings during harsh weather. You have known nights like that too, when walls were thicker, drafts fewer, and the ground less cruel. Those nights felt like borrowed privilege rather than right. Manorial records and estate regulations from the medieval period indicate that access to shelter often followed social rank. Senior shepherds, those trusted with larger flocks or valuable breeding animals, slept closer to secure buildings. Younger or hired hands took more exposed positions. This was not always cruelty. It was calculation. Losses near the flock mattered more than comfort for the keeper. You lie now, where you were assigned, not where you would have chosen freely. You accept this without resentment. Winter has taught you that survival does not depend on fairness. It depends on clarity. Everyone knows their role. Confusion costs lives. The other shepherd nearby holds a slightly different position than yours. His family has served this estate longer. He sleeps nearer the entrance, closer to the fire, closer to risk. You sleep farther in, more shielded. This arrangement was not discussed. It did not need to be. Social understanding settled it long ago. You think briefly of landowners sleeping under heavy roofs, unaware of frost-tightening fields below. The thought does not anger you. Distance dulls comparison. Still, you feel the contrast clearly in your bones. Winter makes inequality tangible. There exists an old rural saying that cold treats everyone equally. From where you lie, you know this is not true. Cold touches everyone, yes, but it reaches some sooner and leaves others later. Clothing, shelter, food, these things are unevenly distributed. Sleep reflects that unevenness. You adjust your cloak, feeling its worn spots and careful repairs. Better cloth exists elsewhere. You have seen it. Thick, tightly woven wool reserved for those higher up the ladder. Yours is patched but dependable. Dependability matters more than appearance. You remind yourself of this as you settle again. Social position also shapes expectation. You are expected to endure. Complaints carry little weight here. Those above you may frame hardship as character building. Those below you, if any exist, suffer more quietly. You occupy a middle space, trusted, but not indulged. There is still discussion among social historians about how much agency shepherds had in negotiating sleeping arrangements during winter. Some suggest experienced workers could secure better conditions over time. Others argue hierarchy remained rigid. Your own experience tells you negotiation existed, but within limits. Skill earned respect. Respect earned small comforts, rarely more. You shift, easing pressure on your hip. The other shepherd stirs briefly, then settles again. You sense the difference in your positions, not as resentment, but as awareness. Awareness keeps you from expecting what will not be given. That acceptance saves energy. You remember earlier winters when you slept closer to the open hillside, fully exposed. You were younger then, less trusted. Those nights shaped you. They taught you where cold finds weakness, how to endure without bitterness. Now, sleeping slightly more sheltered feels earned, though you do not dwell on it. A curious observation appears in some rural accounts. Shepherds sometimes measured status not by pay or title, but by sleeping place during winter. The closer to solid walls, the higher the regard. You smile faintly at the thought. Status measured in drafts and frost. Despite these differences, winter binds you all together. Cold does not respect rank entirely. It seeps into stone and wool alike. Even those under roofs wake stiff and aching. This shared discomfort softens divisions, if only temporarily. You feel this now as the night loosens its grip. The other shepherd stretches, joints cracking softly. You mirror the movement. In that moment, hierarchy fades. Both of you face the same day ahead. Sheep need moving. Fences need checking. Winter does not pause for titles. As dawn approaches, you sense a shift in authority. Daylight returns a certain balance. Visibility replaces reliance on sound. Social roles reassert themselves through tasks rather than sleeping places. You prepare for that transition mentally, letting night concerns recede. There remains no full agreement among scholars about how deeply social hierarchy shaped the everyday emotional life of medieval shepherds. Some argue acceptance was complete. Others suggest quiet resentment simmered beneath routine. From where you lie, the truth feels layered. You accept your place, but you are not blind to it. You sit up slowly, feeling the ache in your back ease slightly as blood begins to flow again. The shelter creaks as others stir. The flock murmurs. Morning is close now. With it comes movement, purpose, and a kind of equality born of shared labor. You breathe in cold air and let it fill your chest. Whatever the night revealed about status, it did not define you completely. Endurance does that. Awareness does that. You have slept where you were meant to sleep and risen when you were meant to rise. As you prepare to stand, you carry with you the quiet understanding that winter sleep is never neutral. It reflects the world as it is, not as it should be. You accept this without surrender. The day ahead will demand effort, not reflection. You rise carefully, crook in hand, ready to step back into the shared work that blurs lines and equalizes purpose. Night has passed. Morning waits. Whatever your place in the order, you are still here, awake and capable. That is enough to carry you forward into another winter day. Morning is still distant, but the shape of it has begun to press gently against the night. Before daylight fully arrives, another rhythm asserts itself, quieter than weather and deeper than habit. The calendar matters now, not the turning of months, but the steady pulse of holy days and fasts that mark time in ways the body feels, even when the mind does not dwell on them. You lie still and realize what day it is, not by counting, but by memory carried in your muscles. The pattern of food, of rest, of expectation shifts subtly depending on where you stand in the church year. Winter nights feel different during certain weeks. Hunger arrives sharper. Sleep feels lighter. Meaning layers itself over cold. Ecclesiastical records from the medieval period make it clear that religious observance shaped daily life deeply, especially in rural communities. Shepherds were no exception. Fast days altered what you ate before sleep. Feast days promised fuller meals and easier rest, though often followed by longer work. You feel those rhythms even now, lying on straw under fading stars. Tonight falls nearer fast. You noticed it earlier in the evening when your portion of food felt smaller. Bread was thinner, cheese more carefully measured. You did not question it. Fasting is not optional here. It is woven into expectation as tightly as work itself. Hunger interacts with sleep in ways you have learned to manage. On fast nights, you sleep lighter. Your body remains more alert, driven by need. Some say fasting sharpens awareness. Others say it simply makes winter harder. From where you lie, both feel true. You rest, but not deeply. You endure, but not without effort. You think briefly of feast days just past. Those nights sleep came easier, belly warm and full. Fire felt more effective. Dreams lingered longer. The contrast sharpens your awareness now. You accept it. The cycle balances itself across the season. There is still debate among historians about how strictly shepherds adhered to religious fasts while working in isolation. Some argue enforcement was lax in remote pastures. Others suggest internal discipline mattered more than supervision. You know your answer. Habit and belief carry weight, even when no one watches. You whisper a brief prayer inwardly, not formal, not elaborate, a simple acknowledgement. Another night endured, another morning approaching. The words are less important than the act. It centers you, offering structure where cold and fatigue threaten to dissolve it. Nearby, the other shepherd stirs and makes a small sign with his hand, barely visible. You recognize it, a shared gesture marking the day. No words pass. They are unnecessary. Faith here is quiet, practiced without performance. The dog remains still, unaware of calendars or saints. Animals live entirely outside these structures. You envy that simplicity briefly, then release the thought. Belief brings its own warmth, even when it demands sacrifice. You notice how church bells, when you are close enough to hear them, influence sleep patterns. Bells mark hours of prayer, calling some awake who might otherwise rest. Out here, those sounds rarely reach you, yet the memory of them persists. You know roughly when they would ring, and your body responds anyway, stirring at those imagined intervals. Some scholars suggest that this internalization of timekeeping was common in medieval society, especially among the devout. Whether or not that interpretation holds fully, you feel its truth in your own restlessness during certain nights. Faith shapes sleep as much as weather does. You adjust your position again, tucking cloak tighter. Hunger sharpens cold, but discipline tempers hunger. You focus on breathing, slow and steady, letting the sensation pass without resistance. Endurance here is as much mental as physical. Snow outside reflects faint early light now, glowing softly. You recognize the timing. Soon, prayers spoken in stone churches will echo through villages. Out here, your prayer remains unspoken, carried inward instead. It counts all the same. You think briefly of shepherds who sleep closer to monasteries or abbeys, whose nights are punctuated by chant drifting through frost. You imagine that sound, steady and human, and wonder whether it soothes or disturbs, perhaps both. There is no single answer. Faith comforts some and burdens others. For you, it offers a framework. Winter nights are easier to endure when they fit into a larger pattern, when suffering feels shared across time rather than isolated. You rest again, lighter now, knowing that morning prayer will come soon. Whether spoken or not, the night has not broken you. It has tested and released you, one more time. As the sky brightens further, you feel ready to rise. Hunger remains, but it is familiar. Cold lingers, but it loosens its hold. Faith, habit, and endurance have carried you through another winter night. You draw a deeper breath, preparing to move. The calendar will turn again soon. Feast will follow fast. Warmth will follow cold. For now, you accept where you stand in the cycle. You open your eyes fully as the first true light reaches the pasture. Another day waits. Another night will come. Between them, you walk steadily, guided not only by land and weather, but by the quiet rhythms that have shaped shepherd's sleep for centuries, holding you gently as you rise to greet the morning. As light grows stronger, you think of those who do not sleep as you do, or who sleep much as you once did, with less strength in their bodies and fewer years of habit to lean on. Winter nights do not belong to one kind of shepherd alone. Age and gender shape rest in quiet, often overlooked ways, altering where a person lies, how deeply they sleep, and how much cold they can afford to tolerate. You remember being younger, bones lighter, joints quicker to complain but faster to recover. As a youth, sleep came more easily, even in harsh conditions. Exhaustion overwhelmed discomfort then. You could drop into rest wherever you were told and rise again with fewer consequences. Winter nights felt endless, but your body rebounded more readily each morning. Estate records and rural contracts suggest that younger shepherds often took the most exposed positions at night, not out of cruelty alone, but because resilience was expected of youth. You lived that expectation. You slept nearer the open ground, closer to where sound carried far and shelter offered little. Those nights taught you early lessons about posture, layering, and listening. They also taught endurance. You think of the young ones now, sleeping lighter than they realize, dreaming harder, waking more abruptly. Their bodies twitch more often. They shift constantly, searching for comfort that winter rarely grants. You recognize it because you once did the same. Women, too, have always been part of this world, though stories often forget them. In many regions, women tended flocks alongside men, especially smaller herds or family animals. Their winter sleep followed similar rules but carried different risks and expectations. You have seen it, even if it was rarely written down. Women shepherds often slept closer to establish shelter when possible, not because they were weaker, but because the world judged their vulnerability differently. Night carried dangers beyond weather and predators. Proximity to walls, to households, to known paths mattered. Sleep for them balanced cold against caution in ways men rarely had to consider. There are scattered references in manorial records to women employed seasonally in pastoral work, though details remain sparse. What is clear from oral tradition is that women adapted winter sleep just as skillfully, using many of the same strategies. Wool, fire, posture, proximity to animals. Skill did not differ, circumstance did. You remember a woman who worked flocks near your own years ago. She slept lighter than anyone, waking at the smallest sound. Not from fear, but from awareness. Her fire was always smaller, her tools closer, her dog never far. She endured winter nights with quiet precision, rising each morning without complaint. Age reshapes sleep too. Older shepherds move less at night, conserving energy. They choose positions that protect joints, even if it means colder air. They wake more slowly, but listen more deeply. Their sleep grows lighter, but their awareness sharper. You find yourself moving in that direction now, recognizing the shift without naming it. Younger ones toss and turn. Older ones settle and stay. Neither approach is better. Each suits the body it belongs to. Winter teaches this differentiation gently but firmly. There is still uncertainty among historians about how responsibilities were divided by age and gender during winter nights. Some argue labor was strictly assigned. Others suggest flexibility based on ability rather than identity. Your experience tells you both existed. Practicality ruled. Whoever could endure a task did it, regardless of who they were. You recall nights when illness or injury forced roles to shift. A younger shepherd took watch while an older one rested deeper. A woman moved closer to the fire, while a man took the outer position. Winter rearranges hierarchy when necessary. Survival outranks custom. Sleep reflects these shifts. Who lies closest to warmth? Who remains most exposed? Who wakes first? These patterns change subtly depending on who shares the night. You notice them instinctively now. Young shepherds dream more vividly, their sleep less guarded. You remember waking from dreams so real they startled you upright, heart racing, breath sharp. With time, dreams thin and soften. Responsibility crowds them out. Sleep becomes quieter, more utilitarian. Women you have known speak of winter dreams differently, often tied to home rather than pasture. Warm rooms, familiar hands. These dreams comforted them, but also sharpened longing. Sleep does not simply restore, it reminds. There exists a quiet belief in some rural communities that winter sleep teaches maturity faster than any lesson spoken aloud. Young shepherds who survive their first winters sleep differently forever after. You feel the truth of that in your own body. The way you lie now is not accidental, it is learned. As morning approaches fully, you see the younger shepherds stirring more restlessly, eager to move, to warm themselves through action. Older ones rise slower, stretching carefully, testing joints before committing weight. Women adjust their gear with practiced efficiency, ready without spectacle. Night has shaped each of you differently, but carried you all through. Sleep did not equalize experience, it revealed it. Yet the cold treated every body with the same indifference, demanding adaptation from all. You rise now with awareness of where you stand between youth and age, between strength and caution. Your sleep has changed over years, becoming lighter, more deliberate, more shaped by knowledge than endurance alone. As daylight strengthens, winter sleep recedes into memory, but its lessons remain. How to lie, how to wake, how to endure. These lessons pass quietly from one shepherd to another, across age and gender, woven into habit rather than instruction. You take a final breath of cold morning air and step forward into the day, carrying the night with you. Somewhere behind you, younger shepherds shake off sleep. Somewhere nearby, women shoulder their tasks without comment. Together, you move onward, shaped by the same winter, resting differently but enduring together, ready for whatever the cold season still holds. Some winters refuse to behave like the others. They arrive heavier, earlier, and linger long after patience wears thin. Even as you move through this morning's first tasks, memory pulls you backward to nights that still live vividly in your body. Extreme winters carve themselves into shepherds more deeply than any ordinary season. They change how you sleep forever. You remember one such winter clearly. Snow came early that year, before flocks had fully moved to lower ground. The first night it fell, it did not stop. By morning, paths vanished, fences disappeared, familiar hills lost their edges. That winter taught you that sleep could no longer follow routine. It had to follow survival. Chroniclers from the medieval period record occasional winters of extraordinary severity. Rivers froze solid, crops failed, livestock perished in numbers large enough to threaten entire communities. These accounts are brief, often understated, but they hint at nights where sleep became a secondary concern. You lived one of those winters, even if no one wrote your name down. During those nights, rest came only in moments snatched between tasks. Fire demanded constant attention. Sheep needed moving even in darkness to keep them from freezing where they stood. You slept sitting more often than lying down, leaning against stone or tree, waking every few minutes to check breath and movement. The cold felt different then. It did not merely press, it threatened. Frostbitten fingers stiffened within moments. Breath burned. Wool felt thin no matter how many layers you wore. Sleep turned from refuge into risk. You learned to distrust it. One odd habit emerged during that winter. You slept with one glove off, hand tucked against bare skin beneath your tunic. The exposed fingers stayed flexible, ready. Losing sensation meant danger. This small adaptation stayed with you long after that winter passed. There are scattered references in later rural tradition to shepherds who refused to lie down at all during certain nights, choosing to pace slowly instead. Whether this was widespread or exceptional remains uncertain. You understand the impulse. Motion preserved warmth. Stillness invited numbness. Sleep had to bend to those realities. That winter changed how you listen. Every sound carried weight. Snow falling from branches could sound like footsteps. Ice splitting beneath pressure echoed like a shout. You slept lighter than ever before. Heart always just a little too fast. Even now, years later, deep cold makes you restless. You remember losing sheep during that winter, not to predators, but to cold itself. Animals froze, standing up, breath slowing until it stopped. You still see them sometimes in memory. Frost crusted along their backs, eyes dulled. Those losses taught you that even perfect vigilance has limits. Stories circulated that winter, tales of entire flocks lost overnight, of shepherds found frozen where they fell. Some stories were true, others grew in the telling, but all of them carried the same lesson: winter could exceed preparation. There is ongoing debate among historians about whether such extreme winters fundamentally altered pastoral practices or were endured and then forgotten. From your experience, they altered people more than systems. Shepherds who survived carried new caution into every following season. They layered earlier. They slept closer to fire. They trusted instinct over tradition when conditions felt wrong. That winter left marks on your body, a finger that aches when cold deepens, a knee that stiffens without warning. You carry those reminders quietly. They surface most clearly at night, when the cold creeps back in and memory follows. You notice now that even ordinary winters feel gentler by comparison. This night, harsh as it was, never crossed into that older territory. You slept, you dreamed, you endured without fear. The contrast sharpens gratitude. Some shepherds never returned to the hills after extreme winters. They took work closer to villages or abandoned flocks altogether. Others stayed, hardened by what they had survived. Both choices made sense. Winter demanded honesty. You think of an old shepherd who once told you that the worst winters teach you what you can lose and still continue. At the time, you did not understand. Now you do. Sleep becomes less about comfort and more about conservation. You learn how little rest is enough, how little warmth can sustain you. There is a peculiar calm that follows survival of extreme cold. Ordinary hardship loses some of its power. You feel that calm now as you think back. This night tested you, but it did not frighten you. You knew its limits. Experience drew those lines clearly. As daylight strengthens, the memory of that severe winter fades slightly, retreating where it belongs. But its lessons remain present in every movement you make, how you sleep, how you listen, how you decide when to rest and when to stay awake. Extreme winters do not just pass, they become reference points. Everything else is measured against them. This knowledge shapes your sleep even now, making you more cautious, more deliberate, more forgiving of discomfort. You rise fully now, joints complaining briefly before loosening. The flock stirs, breath clouds the air. This morning feels survivable. That recognition brings quiet relief. You glance once more at the hills, remembering how they looked buried deep under snow, silent and threatening. Today they look merely cold, manageable. You accept that assessment with steady confidence. As you move forward into the day, you carry the memory of extreme winters not as fear, but as foundation. They taught you how to sleep when sleep felt impossible. They taught you how to rest without surrender. When night comes again, those lessons will settle back into your bones, guiding you quietly. You will lie down knowing what true danger feels like, and knowing that this night, like many now, rests safely on the gentler side of endurance. The change comes before you fully trust it. You feel it in the ground first, a faint softening beneath your boots as frost loosens its grip during the day and returns less fiercely at night. Spring does not arrive with ceremony. It approaches cautiously, testing whether it is welcome. Your sleep senses this long before your eyes do. You remember how winter sleep demanded constant negotiation. Now that negotiation begins to relax. Nights still carry cold, but it no longer threatens to take something from you if you close your eyes too long. You notice that you wake less often. Your body allows itself longer stretches of rest, as if reassured by something unspoken. Historical records describing seasonal pastoral work often mention spring as a time of reorganization rather than relief. Lambing approaches. Flocks grow restless. Work intensifies. Yet sleep changes for the better even as labor increases. You feel this paradox now. Days grow longer and harder, but nights grow kinder. You lie down one evening and realize you have not arranged your bedding as carefully as before. The habit remains, but urgency has faded. Straw feels softer when it does not freeze solid. The ground releases warmth more readily. You still tuck your cloak, but not with the same precision. Small mistakes no longer punish you immediately. The air smells different too. Damp earth replaces sharp frost. You breathe deeper without your chest tightening. This alone improves sleep more than any extra fire ever did. Your lungs no longer fight the cold. Breathing becomes something you stop noticing, which feels like a luxury. You hear it in the flock as well. Sheep shift less anxiously at night. Their breathing steadies. Bells touch more gently. They no longer cluster in desperate knots for warmth. Their bodies spread out slightly, allowing you space to rest without constant contact. You miss their heat a little, but you welcome the calm. The dog stretches more often now, choosing spots for comfort rather than vigilance alone. It still listens, but its posture softens. Animals feel the season changing, even when snow still lingers in shadowed places. There remains discussion among scholars about how clearly medieval shepherds recognized seasonal transitions without calendars or modern forecasting. From where you stand, recognition feels obvious. Your body keeps its own record. Sleep tells you everything. When it deepens without effort, spring has begun its work. You wake one night, startled by how deeply you had slept. For a moment, you worry something is wrong. Then you listen. Nothing has happened. The flock is calm. The night has simply allowed you rest. You smile faintly and let yourself sink back down. Dreams change too. They grow lighter, more expansive. You dream of movement again, of walking longer distances, of grass beneath snowmelt. Winter dreams carried endurance. Spring dreams carry motion. Fire becomes optional rather than essential. Some nights you let it die early, trusting your body to maintain warmth. You wake with fewer aches. Joints still complain, but they loosen faster in the morning. Pain recedes into background noise rather than command. You notice that you begin to lie flatter now, stretching legs out instead of curling tightly. Your body claims more space. This simple change feels like freedom. You had forgotten what it was like to rest without folding inward. The ground itself changes texture. It absorbs sound differently. Nights grow louder again as thawing earth releases moisture, and insects begin to stir. You welcome these sounds. They signal life returning. Sound no longer means threat by default. Some older shepherds speak of this time with caution. They warn that spring nights can deceive. Frost still returns unexpectedly. Snow can still fall. You listen, but you also trust what your body tells you. Winter's edge has dulled. It no longer dominates. You remember that medieval agricultural rhythms depended heavily on recognizing these subtle shifts. Lambing timed too early or too late could ruin a season. Sleep played its role here too. Well-rested shepherds noticed changes faster. Fatigued ones missed signs. You value rest now not just as recovery, but as preparation. One night, you realize you have slept through a full stretch without waking to check the flock. The realization startles you more than any sound would have. Then you listen again. Everything is fine. You accept the gift cautiously, knowing it may not repeat every night, but grateful that it has come at all. The cold still visits before dawn, but it feels different now. It nudges rather than attacks. You pull your cloak higher, turn slightly, and continue sleeping. No elaborate adjustment required. No calculation. This ease feels earned. You think of shepherds centuries before you, experiencing the same shift. Relief mixed with vigilance. Gratitude tempered by memory. Spring does not erase winter. It teaches you how to live after it. As days lengthen, your sleep shortens naturally. You rise earlier without effort. Darkness releases you sooner. This change feels cooperative rather than forced. Your body aligns with the sky again. You prepare bedding less carefully each night, not out of carelessness, but confidence. Confidence built from surviving what came before. Winter taught you precision. Spring allows you to loosen it. There is no single night when you declare winter finished. Instead, you notice that fear no longer enters your thoughts when you lie down. Cold is just cold again, not threat. Darkness is just darkness, not danger. That shift marks the true end of winter sleep. As you settle one evening, stars bright above softer ground, you realize that sleep has become something closer to rest again. Still guarded, still shaped by responsibility, but no longer dominated by survival alone. You close your eyes and let night carry you gently. Spring approaches not as an ending, but a widening. Sleep widens with it, making room for ease, for movement, for breath. You rest, knowing winter has released you. Not fully, but enough. Enough to heal, enough to prepare, enough to move forward into what comes next. When you lie down now, even as winter loosens its hold, you realize that sleep will never return to what it once was. The nights you have endured have altered something permanent inside you. You carry them forward, not as memory alone, but as habit, posture, instinct. Medieval shepherds did not simply survive winter nights, they were reshaped by them, and that shaping lasted long after the cold retreated. You feel this legacy in the way you choose ground without thinking. Even on mild nights, you angle your body instinctively, protecting your back from wind that may never come. You still tuck your cloak carefully, even when warmth no longer demands it. These movements happen before thought. Winter taught your body first. The mind followed later. Pastoral life across the medieval world depended on this quiet accumulation of knowledge. Techniques were rarely written down. They passed from person to person, through example. A younger shepherd watched how an older one lay down, how he positioned his tools, how he woke without panic. Sleep itself became instruction. Manorial records, folk memory, and later rural traditions all point to this continuity. Shepherds centuries apart slept differently than townspeople. Even when conditions softened, they remained lighter sleepers, more attuned to sound, more responsive to land. The night had trained them well. You notice it now when you sleep near others who have not lived this way. They toss, complain, wake startled by sounds you dismiss immediately. You remain calm, listening, sorting, deciding. Winter nights sharpened that ability. You trust it more than comfort. The land remembers too. Hills once chosen for shelter remain favored long after winters grow milder. Huts repaired, generation after generation, keep their place. Paths worn by pacing shepherds remain visible even when no one walks them at night anymore. Sleep leaves marks not only on people, but on ground. There is ongoing discussion among historians about how much medieval pastoral practice influenced later rural life. Some argue industrialization erased these habits. Others suggest they lingered quietly, embedded in custom. From what you feel in your own body, the second feels closer to truth. Skills learned in hardship do not vanish easily. You think of modern shepherds who still sleep lightly in high pastures, still rely on sound and instinct rather than devices. They may carry tools made differently, wear fabrics improved by time, but their sleep remains familiar to you. The core experience has not changed. Cold, responsibility, vigilance, these constants endure. You realize that winter sleep shaped more than rest. It shaped character, patience learned by lying still through discomfort, judgment sharpened by listening rather than reacting, endurance practiced nightly without audience. These traits carried into daylight, influencing how shepherds worked, decided, and led. Even those who left pastoral life carried this training with them. A former shepherd sleeping in a house still wakes easily, still notices drafts, still listens for sounds others ignore. Winter nights follow you wherever you go. You feel a quiet pride in this, not loud or boastful. Pride rooted in having met something difficult repeatedly and learned how to remain yourself within it. Sleep did not break you, it refined you. As you settle now, aware that winter is ending, you do not rush to forget it. You allow its lessons to remain. They will serve you again. Cold will return. Darkness will lengthen. You will lie down differently because of what you already know. This knowledge does not make you invincible. It makes you prepared. Prepared to rest when you can. Prepared to wake when needed. Prepared to endure without panic. You close your eyes with that awareness steady in your chest. Around you, the world continues to turn. Seasons change. Shepherds come and go. But the shape of winter sleep remains, passed quietly from one generation to the next. You rest, knowing that even as conditions improve, you remain someone shaped by long nights on cold ground, by fire tended carefully, by listening more than sleeping. This is not loss, it is inheritance. The flock settles, the dog sighs, the ground holds you gently now. You let yourself rest, carrying forward the legacy of countless nights survived, not as burden, but as quiet strength. Now, as the story slows and the night stretches softly around you, let your breathing lengthen. There is no need to listen so carefully anymore. The cold has eased. The ground no longer demands negotiation. You have done what needed to be done. Imagine the hillside resting too, frost loosening its grip, stones releasing the cold they held so long. Sheep breathe evenly. Wind moves without urgency. Nothing presses for your attention. Allow your body to sink fully now, supported by earth that no longer bites. Let the habits you learned stand guard so you do not have to. They will wake you if needed. Until then, you are free to drift. Your shoulders soften. Your jaw unclenches. Each breath arrives easily and leaves just as gently. The night no longer asks for endurance. It offers quiet. If thoughts wander, let them pass like clouds thinning before dawn. There is nothing to solve, nothing to prepare. You have already prepared through countless nights before this one. Rest here, knowing you are safe, carried by the same calm that has followed shepherds to sleep for centuries once the hardest hours passed. The cold is no longer your concern. The flock is settled. Morning will arrive without your effort. For now, sleep deeply. Let the story fade. Let the hillside blur into warmth and dark. You have earned this rest. Sweet dreams.